Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Nicole Laube. On August 19, 2014, at 5 p.m., the Portland Emergency Services received a distress call from a man reporting a woman stabbed in the chest at the Timber Creek Apartments. The victim, who was still alive but struggling to breathe, needed immediate medical attention. The eyewitness requested an ambulance be sent to the scene as soon as possible. When paramedics arrived, they found the victim. Despite the paramedics' best efforts, she succumbed to her injuries. Before passing away, she shared crucial information. The man who made the 911 call explained that he and his wife were walking down the stairs towards the parking lot when they heard a scream. He looked to his right and saw a woman running towards them, crying out, "He stabbed me! He stabbed me!" The victim told them that she didn't know her attacker, but described him as wearing camouflage pants and a black hoodie. The manager of the Timber Creek Apartments identified the victim as 29-year-old Nicole Laube, a leasing consultant who had been working at the complex for a few weeks. On August 19th, Nicole was driving a golf cart to deliver lease renewal letters to residents, along with a balloon and a popcorn package. She marked each apartment on a map as she made the deliveries. The investigation revealed that the attack likely occurred in a specific stairwell at Timber Creek, known as Breezeway. This conclusion was based on Nicole's notations and the map she had marked. It is believed that the attacker was waiting for her under the stairs, as several indicators pointed to this location, including a trail of blood drops and scattered leaflets at the foot of the stairs. During the investigation, several witnesses reported seeing a suspicious young male wearing a black hoodie and cam pants in the area around the time of the attack. By combining the reports and timelines of each sighting, detectives were able to piece together the path the suspect took into and out of Timber Creek. The Washington County Search and Rescue Team searched the woods along Cedar Mill Creek, which runs through the Timber Creek apartment complex. They found several items during their search and sent them to a laboratory to see if they were relevant to the case. The police contacted Chris Laube, Nicole's husband, to inform him of the incident. Chris and Nicole had a blended family, including 2 daughters from his previous relationships and a son together. Nicole was a strong and resilient person who had overcome cancer as a teenager. She developed a passion for fitness and bodybuilding and competed in several events. Her dream was to become a coach and help others achieve their fitness goals. The attack on Nicole was not a robbery, and Tinoco did not attempt to remove any of her clothing. This suggests that the motive behind the attack may have been personal. As a result, detectives began to focus their attention on her husband, Chris. Nicole was a beautiful woman, a loving wife, an amazing mother, and a devoted friend. She was unafraid to share her faith and opinions with others, and her goal was to make the world a better place. Her legacy lives on, and it's clear that she achieved her goal. She touched the lives of everyone in the room in ways that will have a lasting impact. The police interviewed residents of the Timber Creek Apartments and found 2 witnesses who saw a man in a black hoodie and cam pants matching the suspect's description running across the road during the time of the attack. The witnesses saw the man running towards the houses across the street from the Timber Creek Apartments, not looking around, and with a hood over his head. Using the witnesses' descriptions, detectives created a sketch of the suspect and quickly distributed it throughout the city. A sketch of the suspect was shown on TV. Detectives also worked with informants, gathering several potential leads, including one from a man whose son knew someone named Taylor. According to the man who reported Taylor, he had been threatening people with a knife in recent weeks. The police located Taylor and brought him in for questioning. During the questioning, investigators found his statements unusual and suspected he might be suffering from a mental illness. When asked about Nicole Laube, he openly admitted to taking her life. However, Taylor's confession was inconsistent, repeating information from the news and inventing unrelated details. As a result, police excluded him from their list of suspects. Another potential lead emerged involving a man named Nick, who had a history of crime. Nick had some physical characteristics similar to the suspect in the sketch, but his past behavior didn't suggest he was capable of a crime like the one committed against Nicole. Despite having a history of run-ins with the law, Nick had never been known to physically harm anyone. When police brought Nick in for questioning, he denied any involvement in the crime and requested a lawyer. The police then obtained a search warrant for Nick's home, where they found a black hoodie and camouflage pants. However, the hoodie didn't match the witness's description because it had a prominent white logo on the front. The police sent the clothes to a lab for further analysis, but experts found no evidence linking them to the crime. The police obtained Nick's mobile phone records, which provided conclusive evidence that he was not at the crime scene when Nicole was attacked. This eliminated Nick as a suspect, leaving the investigation at a dead end. 3 weeks after Nicole's death, on September 13, 2014, the Eugene Police Department received a call came from Eugene, the second largest city in Oregon. On the night of the 13th, Heather Miller, a 39-year-old woman, was attacked as she was leaving a bar near Autzen Stadium after watching a game. Tinoco, identified as Jamie Tinoco, was publicly named by the police, who released his photo in the hopes that other victims would come forward. Detectives investigating the death of Nicole Laube noticed a resemblance between Tinoco's photo and their suspect sketch. Further investigation revealed that Tinoco lived with his parents in an apartment directly across from the Timber Creek apartment complex where Laube had died. This geographical proximity strengthened the suspicion that Tinoco might be responsible for her death. Detectives questioned Tinoco about his potential involvement in Laube's death, hoping he would confess, just as he had done in a separate case involving Heather Miller. However, Tinoco denied any involvement in Laube's death and refused to cooperate. As a result, the police had to gather evidence to link Tinoco to the crime. With his parents' apartment located directly across from the Timber Creek complex, the police obtained a search warrant. During the search, they found a black hoodie and cam pants in Tinoco's room, which they sent to the lab for analysis. The lab report results with no DNA match found. While there's no concrete evidence linking Tinoco to Nicole's death, he's clearly responsible for attacking Heather Miller and showed no remorse, even taking pride in his actions during his trial. In a new interrogation, investigators used Tinoco's ego to their advantage, suggesting that if he confessed to Nicole Laube's murder, he would gain respect from other inmates in prison. The detective implied that owning up to the crime would make him appear more formidable, rather than just a coward who attacked a woman from behind. After a brief silence, Tinoco began to open up about Nicole. He claimed that he didn't intend to kill her, but rather wanted to experience the feeling of stabbing someone. According to Tinoco, his goal was to hurt Nicole, not take her life. He described how he had seen Nicole parking a golf cart and carrying a balloon in a small package to an apartment on the second floor of Timber Creek, which is located near his apartment. Nicole was attacked when she went upstairs and then came back down. Tinoco hid behind a golf cart, then ran to the stairs and stabbed Nicole when she descended. He chose Nicole because she seemed like an easy target. When questioned about his intentions, he admitted that he had considered forcing Nicole into a sexual act, just as he had done with Heather Miller. However, he claimed that he didn't follow through with this plan because Nicole screamed loudly after being stabbed, prompting him to flee the scene. During a reenactment of the crime, Tinoco demonstrated how he escaped from the scene. Chris Laube, Nicole's husband, was shocked to learn that the person responsible for his wife's death was only 17 years old. As a father of a 13-year-old daughter, Laube found it incomprehensible that someone just 4 years older than his daughter could commit such a heinous crime. The trial started in 2015. Tinoco confessed to the crime during the interrogation, but he claimed he was innocent in court. His lawyer argued that there was no DNA evidence linking Tinoco to the crime scene. The lawyer asked for mercy for Tinoco, who was 17 years old and severely mentally ill, and hoped that treatment could help him change his behavior. The defense presented only one witness, a psychologist who evaluated Tinoco and found that he exhibited symptoms of schizophrenia. However, another psychologist from the Oregon State Hospital disagreed, saying that Tinoco had a personality disorder, not schizophrenia. The jury was convinced of Tinoco's guilt after watching a video of his confession and an experiment where he recreated his actions at the time of the crime. Jamie Tinoco provided details during a reenactment of Nicole Laube's crime that only the perpetrator would know. This led to a guilty verdict on all counts in 2017. The jury was tasked with deciding Tinoco's sentence, choosing between life without parole or life with the possibility of parole after 30 years. However, they found insufficient mitigating circumstances to warrant the option of parole, resulting in a sentence of life without parole. Before the official sentencing, Circuit Judge Kirsten Thompson allowed Tinoco to speak. With his attorneys by his side, Tinoco apologized and asked for forgiveness. Chris Laube, Nicole's husband, recalled that Tinoco's family approached them after the sentencing to offer condolences and apologize. However, in 2021, the Oregon Court of Appeals overturned Tinoco's conviction, citing changes in juvenile laws. At the time of the crime, Tinoco was automatically referred to adult court due to the nature of the offense. New reforms now allow for offenders between 15 and 17 years old to be tried in juvenile court, rather than being automatically referred to adult court. A new law requires prosecutors to request a hearing to decide if a juvenile's serious crime case should be moved to adult court. This change affects the overturned conviction of Tinoco in the Nicole Laube case. Although Tinoco remains in prison, his defense may try to reduce his sentence if he's retried and reconvicted. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kelly Cochran. Christopher Reagan grew up in Detroit, Michigan, where he received his education. At 20, he decided to serve his country and join the military. He was stationed at a base near Marquette, where he met Terry, a young teacher from Iron River. They became friends, bonding over their shared values and interests. Their friendship grew into a close relationship, but Christopher's military service didn't allow for a romantic relationship. When he left the military, he moved to Traverse City, but the distance didn't weaken their bond. In 2012, Christopher proposed a long-distance romantic relationship, and Terry agreed. They shared many common interests, including a love of nature and a desire for a peaceful lifestyle. They decided to live together in Iron River, where Christopher found a job at a factory. However, after 2 years, their passion faded and they parted ways amicably. Christopher moved out and began looking for a new place to live. He found a job in Asheville, North Carolina, and started a new chapter in his life. On October 14th, he told Terry he had taken the day off and suggested they meet up the next day for a walk. However, he failed to contact her the next day, and Terry became worried. After trying to reach him for several days, Terry filed a police report about Christopher's disappearance. The police reassured her that people sometimes disappear and then return, but Terry was concerned. At the police station, Terry told investigators that Christopher had recently received a job offer in North Carolina and might have started a new life, cutting ties with his past. However, to avoid speculation, a detailed investigation was launched. The police identified the company where Christopher had started working and contacted an employee, but surprisingly, no information about Christopher could be obtained, as he hadn't shown up to work in 10 days. Search efforts were then focused on the local woods, where Christopher often took solo trips with specially trained dogs deployed to aid in the search. Unfortunately, no trace of him was found. Terry suggested searching Christopher's former apartment to rule out any accidents or potential clues to his whereabouts. Upon entering the apartment, detectives found it in disarray, with items scattered across the floor and open closets. Although it initially seemed like Christopher was simply a messy person, Terry knew him to be more organized. The detectives began to suspect that the disarray might be related to a crime. After inspecting the apartment, they decided to expand the search area. They eventually found Christopher's car outside the city limits, about 8 miles from Iron River. Inside the car, they found ordinary clothes and a piece of yellow paper with a route written on it. The route had no specific address, but detailed notes described the path, including turning at a bus stop or driving past a gas station. Terry explained that Christopher, despite living in Iron River, wasn't familiar with the street names, so he wrote down directions in this way. The detectives followed the route, which led them to a house in a neighboring town. Upon knocking on the door, they met Jason Cochran, an overweight man, and his wife Kelly. The officers informed the couple that they were investigating Christopher's disappearance and found a piece of paper with their address in his abandoned car. Kelly revealed that she worked with Christopher at the same plant, and they were friends. Although Kelly hadn't been in contact with Christopher recently, she had tried to reach him via text messages in mid-October. She assumed he had started his new job in North Carolina and didn't respond. Kelly also mentioned Christopher's health issues, which might have led him to start anew. The investigators were puzzled by the route leading to the Cochran home and why it was in Christopher's car. Despite the lack of answers, the couple cooperated with the investigation. After further questioning, the detectives left the Cochran home and proceeded to interview Christopher's co-workers at the factory. There, they discovered that Christopher was having an affair with Kelly Cochran, which had been rumored for months. The investigation into Christopher's disappearance sparked a new lead when Kelly Cochran made a surprising statement. Investigators decided to re-question Kelly and her husband Jason to get to the bottom of their relationship. Kelly eventually admitted to having an affair with Christopher, but initially withheld the information because of her husband's presence. Kelly claimed that she and Jason had an open relationship and Jason was okay with her infidelity. However, Christopher's co-workers disputed this, saying that Jason did not approve of the affair and that the Cochran family did not have an open relationship. When Jason was questioned, he revealed that he was strongly opposed to his wife's infidelity, making him a suspect. However, the lack of concrete evidence meant that the investigators couldn't conclude that he was involved in Christopher's disappearance. Kelly and Jason were released from the police station, and the investigation continued for 5 months without a breakthrough. A new investigator, Detective Jeremy Ogden, took over the case and began a thorough analysis of the Cochran family's history. Kelly and Jason had met in high school and started living together after graduation. Despite their personality differences, they got married and started a swimming pool maintenance business. Jason handled most of the work, but the physical demands took a toll on his health, leaving him with back problems. When Jason's condition worsened, Kelly took over the business. During this time, Kelly sought ways to help her husband recover, including finding a medicinal plant that could help alleviate his back pain. However, the plant was banned in their state, so they moved to Michigan in 2014 to access it. In Michigan, Kelly and Jason got jobs at the same plant where Christopher worked. Kelly and Christopher became close friends, which was important to him given his relationship troubles with Terry. The prosecutors eventually obtained a search warrant for the Cochrans' home, but the search yielded no evidence linking them to Christopher's disappearance. The only significant find was a book written by Jason under a pseudonym inspired by video games. The title of the book caught their attention, but its content was disturbing. The book described violent murder scenes targeting everyone who had ever wronged Jason. The detectives read it thoroughly and found a character that matched Christopher's profile exactly. This strengthened their suspicions about Jason, making them wonder if he wasn't making up the crimes, but instead drawing inspiration from real events he had committed. 3 weeks later, the police decided to conduct another search of the Cochran house, hoping to find evidence they might have missed the first time. However, when they arrived, they found the house empty and the family had moved to Indiana. This made the investigators anxious, as they feared they might not find the crucial evidence they had been searching for months, particularly DNA samples from the suspects. Michigan police contacted their Indiana counterparts to help collect DNA samples from the Cochrans. The Indiana police officers went to the Cochrans' new home, and Jason and Kelly did not object to the procedure, as there was no concrete evidence linking them to the murder. Time passed, and on February 22, 2016, Kelly called the police, frantic, saying her husband Jason was unresponsive. When the rescue team arrived, they found Kelly in a panic, trying to obstruct the doctors. Jason was sitting in a chair, his face severely burned as if from extreme overheating. The doctors confirmed his death, and the body was sent for forensic examination. During the search of the Cochrans' new home, an officer discovered a syringe needle near the bed. The forensic report revealed that Jason's death was not due to drug abuse, as initially suspected, but rather strangulation, confirmed by bruises on his neck and face. This discovery turned Jason, the prime suspect in Christopher's kidnapping, into a victim himself. The investigation became even more complex, and forensic experts shifted their focus to Kelly Cochran, who now became the prime suspect in both Christopher's disappearance and her husband's murder. Kelly was invited to the police station to testify in Jason's murder case. During the interrogation, the investigators asked her directly if she had administered excessive doses of illegal drugs to her husband or was involved in his death. However, despite the pressure, Kelly did not confess to either crime. Months later, the investigators still lacked concrete evidence to prove Kelly's guilt and justify an arrest. During the investigation, Detective Jeremy Ogden met Walter Hammerman, a close friend of Jason's, who insisted that illegal drugs could not have caused Jason's death, as he knew his friend well and would have been informed about any changes in his life. Jason had been using medicinal herbs to alleviate his chronic back pain. However, his friend Walter noticed a significant change in his behavior around March last year. Jason confided in Walter about the mounting pressure from the Iron River police, who suspected him and his wife Kelly of involvement in a man's disappearance. The ordeal had taken a toll on Jason, leaving him depressed and even suicidal, which required intensive treatment. Walter observed that Kelly had begun to exert more control over Jason's life, making him increasingly anxious and withdrawn. Jason would avoid social gatherings when Kelly was around, and their video game sessions had become a thing of the past. These observations proved crucial in the investigation, helping detectives understand the dynamics within the Cochran family. After the medical examiner determined that Jason's death was by strangulation, Detective Ogden devised a plan to lure Kelly into a trap. The plan involved using Walter as bait to prompt Kelly into making a mistake. Walter agreed to play along, and on March 12, 2016, he called Kelly under police surveillance. He pretended that Jason had given him a letter containing vital information, which Kelly was supposed to send to the police if anything happened to Jason. However, Kelly suddenly told Walter to drop the idea, catching both him and the police off guard. Despite this, detectives still lacked concrete evidence, and Kelly continued to deny her involvement during subsequent interrogations. On April 26, 2016, Kelly seemingly evaded the authorities, prompting a federal manhunt. Walter, who had cooperated with the police, was shocked and fearful that Kelly might evade justice and potentially target him. The police eventually tracked Kelly's phone to the West Coast, and on April 28th, they arrested her at her cousin's home in Wingo, Kentucky. Once in custody, Kelly confessed to her relationship with Christopher Rain, revealing that she had wanted to leave her husband and start a new life with him. However, when Jason discovered her infidelity, Their situation escalated, and Kelly was bound by a pact they had made on their wedding night, obliging her to kill her lover if her cheating was exposed. Kelly Cochran claimed she never intended to follow through on an agreement she made with her husband, Jason, but he was determined to see it through. The agreement was a threat to kill Christopher Rain, Kelly's lover, if she didn't end the affair. Kelly didn't want to do it, but she ultimately helped Jason commit the crime. On October 14, 2015, Christopher arrived at Kelly's house while her husband was away. Kelly offered him dinner and intimacy, and they went upstairs to the bedroom. However, Jason suddenly appeared, panicked and holding a rifle. Without hesitation, he shot Christopher in the head, killing him instantly. Under Jason's direction, Kelly helped dismember Christopher's body using a hacksaw, detaching his limbs and head from his torso. They placed the remains in trash bags and dumped them in the woods near Crystal Falls. They also drove Christopher's car away from the house to avoid suspicion and thoroughly cleaned the house to remove evidence of the crime. Kelly later confessed to her role in the crime, saying she wanted revenge against Jason for forcing her to end her affair with Christopher. She was deeply in love with Christopher and felt Jason had deprived her of happiness. Months later, on February 22, 2016, Kelly killed Jason by suffocating him after giving him a lethal dose of medication. She then helped the police find Christopher's remains, which were buried in the woods near Crystal Falls. A team of investigators and a canine unit searched the area and eventually found a human skull with a bullet hole, confirming it was Christopher's severed head. A .22 caliber bullet, a broken gun, and glasses likely belonging to Reagan were found at the scene. Dental records were used to identify the victim's remains, finally solving the 2-year-old missing person case. In April 2016, Kelly Cochran was formally charged with the murders of Christopher Regan and Jason Cochran. On February 13, 2017, the 34-year-old was arraigned in Michigan State Court. The prosecutor argued that Kelly was the mastermind behind both crimes and that her motive was rage and jealousy. Christopher viewed their relationship as casual, but Kelly genuinely loved him and wanted a future together. When Christopher refused to commit, Kelly decided to kill him, making up a story about a pact with her husband. The prosecution had strong evidence, including Kelly's confession in court. However, Kelly claimed she was being abused by her jealous husband, who had planned and committed the crime. She said he hid in the basement, caught the lovers off guard, and then shot Christopher in a rage. Kelly claimed Jason suggested dismembering the body and coerced her into helping by threatening to kill her. This version raised doubts about Kelly's guilt, but the jury still found her guilty of premeditated murder. Kelly was sentenced to life without parole. Jason Cochran's case was settled with a plea agreement, and Kelly received an additional 65 years in prison. Kelly was sent to Crown Point Correctional Facility in Michigan, where she is serving her sentence and regrets that her personal life didn't work out. In a phone interview, Kelly said, "I tried to do what I thought was right. I got married." She also shared, "It was good in the beginning, but in the end, all my efforts were in vain. All I did was work while my husband played computer games." In prison, Kelly continues to reveal details of her crimes, claiming she and Jason committed more crimes and that Christopher was just one of their many victims. However, Kelly's claims are difficult to verify, and there is no concrete evidence to support them. Her brother has also heard similar claims, but there is no evidence to back them up. Detective Jeremy Ogden is investigating the details, hoping to find evidence of other possible crimes committed by Kelly and Jason Cochran. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Christy Shawn. Christy Maria Shawn Cody was born on September 3, 1976, in Madrid, Spain, to American military parents. Due to her father's duties as a U.S. Air Force soldier, the family frequently relocated, following him to various European countries before eventually returning to the United States. Shawn began her education in New Orleans, Louisiana, but the family soon moved to Texas, then Illinois, and later spent several years in Latin American countries. Although this nomadic lifestyle presented challenges, it also allowed her to develop valuable skills, such as speaking multiple languages and experiencing different cultures. However, during her teenage years, Shawn struggled to adjust to new environments, make friends, and settle into new social circles. Just as she would start to feel comfortable, the family would move again, requiring her to adapt to new schools and peer groups. Despite these challenges, Shawn developed strong communication skills, which enabled her to quickly find common ground with diverse people. She was known for being a sweet, sociable, and charming young woman. In addition to her social skills, Shawn was also actively involved in sports from an early age, participating in gymnastics, swimming, and kickboxing classes for a time. When Christy finished school, her family moved to Beloit, Mississippi, where her father had retired from the military. It was here that she formed lasting friendships and discovered a passion for cooking. She experimented with various recipes, honing her culinary skills and earning praise for her creations. This led her to pursue formal culinary training, completing courses to further develop her talent. While her parents expected her to become a professional chef, Christy also discovered an aptitude for acting. She enrolled in an acting academy in Los Angeles, seizing every opportunity that came her way. She appeared in commercials, performed on stage, and worked as an extra or stunt performer in several high-profile productions. After graduating from the academy in 2000, Christy had yet to land a significant role. Despite her talents and striking appearance, she shifted her focus to her culinary skills and sports, turning these passions into a successful business. Christy is a strong advocate for a healthy lifestyle, offering advice on proper nutrition and developing her own exercise routines to maintain physical fitness. About a year after her TV debut, she founded a successful catering company that provides banquet services and retails prepared culinary products. Her business stands out for its focus on healthy eating and features her own original recipes. Christy's next goal is to start her own farm, which will grow healthy and environmentally friendly produce. This will enable her to expand her catering business while promoting sustainable practices. In addition, she conducts online courses on proper nutrition and develops other projects, further establishing herself as a prominent figure in the culinary industry. In 2012, Christy had a fateful encounter on TV when she met Joseph Timothy Cody, a casting director known as JT, at a studio in Los Angeles. At the time, Christy was auditioning for a culinary show, and JT was responsible for selecting participants and actors for various high-rated projects. There was an instant connection between them. Despite being nearly 7 years older than Christy and in the process of getting a divorce, JT was captivated by her beauty and charisma. He began to pursue her, and Christy was receptive to his advances. Soon, they started a romantic relationship. Joseph and his partner Christy shared a dream of building a life together in North Carolina. They left Los Angeles, selling their businesses and home, and invested in a large plot of land in Leicester. They bought a spacious house and nearly 1-acre property where Christy focused on her blog about healthy nutrition and lifestyle, and Joseph continued to work with TV channels remotely. Their relationship was filled with harmony, and in August 2014, they had a grand wedding attended by hundreds of guests. 3 months later, they were overjoyed to discover they were expecting their first child. They learned they were having a daughter during a routine ultrasound examination and chose to name her Skylar. Everything seemed perfect, but their happiness was short-lived. Christy's mother, who lived out of state, regularly called her to update on her life. However, on March 13, 2015, Christy's mother couldn't reach her, but didn't think much of it. The next day, neither Christy nor Joseph answered their phones. By March 15th, both phones were turned off, which alarmed Christy's mother. She asked a close friend, Cecily, who lived nearby, to check on the couple. Cecily found the cars parked outside, but the front door was locked, and no one responded to her knocks and shouts. She saw the couple's dogs locked in a room through a window and noticed the back door lock had been broken. She immediately called Christie's mother, who then contacted the police. The responding officers found signs of a break-in at the back door and disarray inside the house. Valuables were stolen, including a jewelry box and a breached safe in the bedroom. However, there was no evidence of a struggle, bloodshed, or forced detention. The perpetrator seemed to have taken great care to leave no fingerprints or DNA traces. The relatives held out hope that Joseph and Christie might still be alive, but experienced officers were not optimistic. The investigation struggled to make progress, with no significant clues or evidence found. The missing couple appeared to have no enemies, making it difficult to piece together what had happened. The police decided to question the neighbors to see if they had noticed anything unusual recently. A crucial detail emerged during the investigation into the disappearance of Christie and Joseph Cody. A neighbor reported seeing another local resident, later identified as 36-year-old Robert Jason Owens, throwing a large bundle into a trash bin near the Cody's home on the morning of March 15th. Although the trash had already been taken to the dump, the police wanted to speak with Owens, who was a handyman and friend of the couple. Upon questioning, Owens initially denied any involvement in the couple's disappearance and claimed ignorance about the bundle. However, the situation changed dramatically when the bundle was found at the landfill, containing items from the missing couple's home, including Owens' fingerprints and DNA traces on partially burnt clothing stained with blood. A search of Owens' home revealed charred human skeletal remains in his wood stove, incriminating him in the brutal elimination of his neighbor and his pregnant wife. Despite his initial denials, Owens eventually confessed to the crime after several hours of questioning. According to Owens, the incident occurred on the evening of March 12th, when he visited the Cody's home after getting stuck in the mud. He claimed that while trying to get his car out, he accidentally struck and ran over the couple while sitting in the driver's seat. Panicked, he decided not to call the police and instead covered up the incident. Owens claimed that he broke into the Cody's house, took blankets to move the bodies, and then dismembered them in his own bathroom. He proceeded to burn the body parts in his stove, but packed the blood-soaked clothing, blankets, and footwear into a trash bag and disposed of them in a dumpster. The police were shocked by Owens' cruel actions and eerie calmness when recounting the events. Forensic analysis confirmed that the bone fragments found in Owens' stove belonged to the missing couple. Robert, a man with no family and little contact with relatives, moved to Leicester in 2000 after buying land and building a house. However, his name became linked to a 15-year-old unsolved crime in Asheville, where he previously lived. The crime involved his close friend Zeb Wayne Quinn, who vanished mysteriously at the age of 18. Zeb and Robert had been friends since school and lived nearby. Zeb was undergoing military training and worked part-time at Walmart. On January 2, 2000, Zeb finished his shift and met with Robert, planning to drive to Leicester to buy a new car. However, he never returned home. A few days later, Zeb's car was found parked in another part of town with its headlights on and a heart drawn on the window with red lipstick. The car had damage and scratches with paint particles from another vehicle. Robert, who was the last person to see Zeb, told an implausible story. According to Robert, Zeb asked him to stop the car to make a phone call, saying he received an urgent message on his pager. Zeb drove off to a gas station, returned 10 minutes later looking frantic, and changed their plans. He then drove off in an unknown direction, hitting Robert's car in the process. However, Robert's car also had damage with paint particles from Zeb's car, raising suspicions about his involvement in Zeb's disappearance. Zeb Quinn had been romantically involved with Misty Taylor, who previously dated Wesley Smith. Smith had threatened Zeb, warning him to stay away from Misty or face harm. Although Zeb, Smith, and Owens were questioned, they were released due to lack of evidence. Misty and Smith had alibis, but Robert did not. A large sum of money Zeb had been carrying to buy a car vanished from his car and pager. The investigation suggested that Zeb never received a mysterious message, if any. A strange incident occurred the day after Zeb's disappearance. Someone claiming to be Zeb called Walmart, saying he would be absent from work for a few days due to illness. However, the colleague who answered the call thought the voice sounded unfamiliar, not like Zeb's. The call was traced back to a Volvo plant where Robert worked. When questioned, Owens unexpectedly claimed he made the call at his friend's request the night before Zeb disappeared. Despite further investigation, no new evidence or witnesses were found, and the case remains unsolved, with Zeb Quinn still listed as missing. 15 years after the events, Owens was questioned again, suspected of being involved in his friend Zeb Quinn's disappearance. The case was reopened in June 2015, and the investigation resumed. Although Owens stuck to his original story, the police searched his property thoroughly and found something unusual. In a concrete slab on Owens' property, they discovered a hidden cavity containing small, heavily charred human bone fragments. Unfortunately, the remains were too damaged for DNA analysis, so it was impossible to confirm whether they belonged to Quinn. A neighbor's statement added another surprising detail. An elderly man recalled an incident from January 2000 when Owens had just bought the land and was building his house. One evening, Owens started a fire that emitted a sickly, sweet, nauseating smell, which the neighbor found unbearable due to the wind blowing the stench in his direction. After covering the fire pit with concrete, which raised suspicions, Robert Owens claimed he intended to build a small fountain, but never did. 15 years later, the police arrived at the property, and Owens confessed to a crime, offering a new explanation. He stated that his uncle, Walter Owens, had murdered Misty's boyfriend, Zeb, at the request of Wesley Smith, who was still in love with Misty. Robert claimed he was unaware of the plan at the time and was only asked by his uncle to lure Zeb to a secluded area. According to Robert, his uncle had ordered them to stop their cars in a wooded area and then had Zeb exit his vehicle. Walter then shot Zeb silently and instructed Robert to help dismember and package the body. The body was burned on Robert's property that night and encased in concrete. However, it was not possible to question Walter Owens, as he had died several years prior to Robert's confession. The police found no evidence at the alleged crime scene, and Robert's story seemed unconvincing. He was charged with multiple crimes, including first-degree murder, murder of an unborn child, dismemberment, concealment of evidence, burglary, and robbery, which could have led to the death penalty. The defendant's lawyer argued that their client's depression and mental disorders, which required powerful medication, contributed to their actions. This defense strategy could have led to the defendant being found not guilty by reason of insanity and sent to a psychiatric hospital instead of prison. However, the prosecution and the victim's relatives were not satisfied with this possibility. Meanwhile, the investigation into Quinn's case was ongoing, which could have also resulted in the defendant avoiding punishment. In 2017, the defendant accepted a plea deal, pleading guilty to the murders of the Codes in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. As a result, they were convicted of second-degree manslaughter, as well as several other crimes including dismemberment, incineration of bodies, burglary, and robbery. Owens was sentenced to 59 years in prison. In 2022, he reached another plea deal with authorities, this time related to Quinn's case. Although he only admitted to being an accomplice to murder and helping to conceal evidence, he received an additional 12-year sentence, effectively extending his life sentence. After sentencing, Owens spoke to the court, asking the families of his victims for forgiveness. Despite this, he maintained his innocence, blaming an accident and his mental disorder, which he claimed was exacerbated by strong medication. However, the families of Christe and Joseph Coed, as well as Quinn's family, remained unconvinced. They rejected the notion of unintentional murder, believing that Owens acted deliberately and with selfish motives in both cases. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Esmeralda Richiez. Esmeralda Richiez Martinez was born on August 23, 2006, in La Alta Gracia, Dominican Republic, to restaurant owners Alio Rosti and Isabel Martinez. She grew up in a happy and close-knit family with an older sister, and the two were extremely friendly. As Esmeralda grew older, she blossomed into a bright and beautiful young woman. She was passionate about singing, dancing, and showcasing her artistic talents on social media. In her senior year of high school in 2023, Esmeralda, also known as Morala, was a popular and cheerful student who was surrounded by friends. One of her close friends was 35-year-old John Kelly Martinez, a new teacher at her school. John Kelly had recently entered the public education system after passing a competitive teacher's exam and was undergoing a one-year probationary period. He quickly won over his students with his friendly approach, treating them like peers and organizing regular outings outside of school. John, a married teacher and father of two, prioritized his students over his family. He spent most of his free time with them, building trust and relationships. Esmeralda was one of these bright and beautiful students. On the evening of February 12, 2023, John met with his female students, including Esmeralda, outside of school. He picked her up last and introduced himself as her teacher, promising to drive her home afterward. They joined two other men and two female students, and John drove them to the beach in his car. Everyone except John and Esmeralda got out of the car when they arrived. The two of them spent some time alone before joining the others. They drank a few beers and took a short walk along the beach. However, their evening was cut short when Esmeralda suddenly fell ill and started bleeding. They had to rush her back home. The next morning, her parents found her dead. The autopsy revealed that she was murdered, leaving her parents with unanswered questions. The National Institute of Forensic Medicine initially concluded that Esmeralda Richiez's death was caused by a severe internal bleeding and hemorrhagic shock resulting from a perennial laceration. However, following a thorough autopsy, the final classification of her death was undetermined. What led to such a tragic event when Esmeralda was accompanied by friends and a supervising teacher? The investigation shed light on the events. Police interviews with Esmeralda's friends and a review of their phones revealed crucial clues, leading to the identification of a suspect. One of Esmeralda's friends, who had been with the teacher and Esmeralda that evening, provided a shocking testimony. She claimed to have seen the professor secretly add 5 pills to Esmeralda's drink while they were at the beach. The initial police findings sparked widespread speculation in the Dominican Republic, where abortion is illegal. Many theories emerged about the cause of Esmeralda's death, with some believing she died of a heart attack, and others speculating that she bled to death due to abortion pills allegedly given to her by John Kelly. The medical examiner's report was expected to put an end to rumors and speculation. However, when the forensic examination results were released, speculation only ceased for a brief moment. Esmeralda's relatives were shocked and skeptical when they learned the results, which ruled out pregnancy. The family was unhappy with the report's conclusion because it contradicted their theory, which was supported by the investigation's findings and evidence. Previously, an examination of Esmeralda's friends' phones had uncovered numerous text messages hinting at the teacher's long-standing interest in the student, but these clues were indirect. After a failed pregnancy, an investigation found that John Kelly drugged a girl without her consent and violently assaulted her on the beach, causing severe blood loss. A few hours later, Esmeralda, died. Toxicology test results were still pending. Based on the evidence, the prosecutor's office requested that John Kelly Martinez and his alleged accomplice, Ruben Murillo Martinez, be detained, as they are the main suspects in Esmeralda's death. As a result, John Kelly Martinez was suspended from his teaching position for 90 days without pay due to the evidence against him. The prosecutor's office also requested that John Kelly be held in preventive detention for a year as the primary suspect in Esmeralda's death. To clarify, preventive detention is not a punishment for a crime, but rather a measure to prevent the person from committing further crimes while the investigation continues. New investigations, including fresh episodes and eyewitness interviews, have deepened the mystery surrounding the student's tragic death. Despite multiple stops during the journey to tend to her severe bleeding, neither the individuals assisting her nor the entire company took the crucial step of calling emergency services or rushing her to the hospital. Several stops made by the defendants were captured on surveillance cameras. Witnesses reported that they purchased alcohol and that Esmeralda and John went to the restroom together. They also visited a pharmacy to buy medication, water, and feminine hygiene products. It was later discovered that Esmeralda had to change her clothes completely at one of the stops because they were soaked in blood. After Esmeralda was dropped off at home, her parents noticed she was bleeding heavily. Assuming it was related to her menstrual cycle, her mother gave her a painkiller to help her fall asleep. One of Esmeralda's cell phones revealed that she had sent an audio message to a friend in the early morning hours, pleading for help and saying, "Please help me, I'm bleeding." Unfortunately, the friend didn't hear the message until it was too late. The next day, Esmeralda was found unresponsive on her bathroom floor, covered in blood. On February 14th, John Kelly Martinez was arrested, and his home was searched the following day. The clothes he wore on the night in question were seized during the search. Additionally, his cousin, Ruben Murillo, was accused of trying to hide John's bloody pants. The investigation into the event has been plagued by ambiguities. Rather than fueling speculation, the prosecutor's office should have provided clarity on the circumstances surrounding the young girl's death, which had alarmed the public and sparked demands for a thorough and high-quality investigation. Many people felt that the investigation had missed crucial evidence, including a thorough search of the teacher's home and car, which were potential crime scenes. The authorities quickly requested to examine the car, but John Kelly's wife sold it soon after, raising suspicions that she was trying to hide evidence. The car's new owner was Panaga Pillar. Only when the authorities threatened to take action against J.C. Espinal Rowe, John Kelly's wife, and Frank Panaga for their alleged involvement in the case did they finally inspect the car. Although they found traces of Esmeralda's blood, no other significant evidence was discovered. The court decided that there was not enough evidence to keep J.C. Espinal Rowe in jail, so she was released. The investigation continued for several months. The prosecutor reopened the case, re-interviewing the three girls who had been with Esmeralda that night. Their testimony helped investigators piece together the events of that night, minute by minute. At 7:30 p.m., John Kelly Martinez, 35, and his cousin Ruben Murillo Martinez went to Esmeralda's home in La Otra Banda Igay with the three girls in the passenger compartment of the car. John, posing as Esmeralda's teacher, coaxed her away from her mother, promising an exciting evening with her classmates. Initially, the plan was to take the group to an amusement park, but John changed his mind en route and chose a new destination. It's likely that John had no intention of going to the amusement park and instead opted for a quiet evening at Mile Beach. During the drive, John stopped at a store to buy a beer and asked his brother to move to the back seat, allowing Esmeralda to sit in the front. John had a thermos with him, which he filled with beer and secretly added 5 unknown pills. He offered the drink to Esmeralda without warning her about the pills, but one of her friends noticed this when they arrived at the beach. The three girls left the car, leaving Esmeralda alone with John. They spent about 30 minutes alone in the car, which didn't go unnoticed by Esmeralda's friends. Suddenly, John emerged and instructed everyone to get back in the car, claiming they needed to leave urgently. During their journey, they had to make multiple stops due to Esmeralda's heavy bleeding. One of these stops occurred at 9:45 when they pulled into a gas station parking lot. There, Esmeralda visited the restroom in the cafeteria, as confirmed by eyewitness accounts and CCTV footage. Esmeralda's classmate reported that she asked to stop at a gas station because she needed to use the restroom. When Esmeralda went in with her friends, they were shocked to see that her clothes were covered in blood. The restroom was also heavily blood-stained, requiring they to mop the floor. They were frightened and asked the gas station attendant if this was normal, and she told them it was not, and that they needed to take Esmeralda to the doctor right away. They told John Kelly, Esmeralda's teacher, about the situation, but he refused to take her to the hospital, fearing he would be arrested. An investigation later confirmed that Esmeralda's blood was found in the parking lot and restroom at the gas station. Surveillance footage and a receipt also showed that they had stopped at a pharmacy to buy medical supplies, including sanitary pads, at 10:21 p.m. John Kelly eventually dropped Esmeralda off at her home around 11 p.m., but she was still heavily bleeding, having been left alone in the car with him. A subsequent medical report on February 16th revealed that Esmeralda had suffered severe and brutal abuse, resulting in massive blood loss and hypovolemic shock. While this condition could have been treated, Esmeralda never received the life-saving medical attention she needed that night. Esmeralda's toxicology report revealed the presence of a synthetic gestagen, a key ingredient in abortion pills. However, it had already been established that Esmeralda was not pregnant. This substance is taken orally as a contraceptive and works by suppressing ovulation and fertilization. Given its presence in her body, it's likely that John Kelly, her teacher, had planned to engage in intimate relations with her. After a series of medical examinations, Esmeralda's body was finally laid to rest at the Albano Public Cemetery. Her family and friends, including Malala, bid her a sad farewell, remembering her as a kind and cheerful person. Her devastated parents couldn't help but replay the fateful evening in their minds, blaming themselves for trusting John Kelly with their daughter's care and allowing her to go for a walk with him. On June 4, 2023, prosecutors charged John Kelly Martinez, a math and physical education teacher, in connection with the death of Esmeralda Richiez after reconstructing the last hours of her life. 8 days later, on June 12, 2023, the LA Alagia Prosecutor's Office filed an indictment and requested a trial against Martinez and his cousin, Rubiel Milo Martinez, in the LA Alagracia Instructional Court. The trial was initially scheduled for August 23, 2023, but was postponed due to Storm Franklin and rescheduled for November 24, 2023. However, the judge later ordered that John Kelly Martinez be retried as the sole defendant in Esmeralda Richiez's death. The new trial was initially set to begin on January 9, 2024, but was rescheduled again because only half of the witnesses showed up. The trial is now scheduled to take place on February 1st and 6th, 2024, before the Collegiate Court of the Penitentiary Chamber of First Instance of La Altagracia. The defense attorney argued that the prosecution's case relied too heavily on the idea that the victim's parents were responsible for her death, rather than focusing on the actions of the defendant. The prosecution, on the other hand, presented a significant amount of evidence, including witness statements, expert testimonies, and physical evidence, to build a strong case against the defendant. During the trial, the defendant attempted to portray himself as a victim, claiming that his interactions with the victim on the night of her death were consensual. When Professor John Kelly Martinez brought Esmeralda home, she was alive and in good health. However, the court documents reveal that Martinez voluntarily inflicted severe injuries on Esmeralda, including lacerations, abrasions, and contusions, which ultimately led to her death due to acute internal and external bleeding and hemorrhagic shock, as confirmed by the autopsy report. Despite Martinez's statement in court, it had no impact on the judges or the audience. On March 14, 2024, Martinez, 36, was sentenced to 20 years in prison for violent conduct. He will serve his sentence at the Anamuya Correctional and Rehabilitation Center. Additionally, Rubiel Maro Martinez, the defendant's cousin and an accessory after the fact, was given a conditional enforcement measure requiring him to make regular court appearances in Hayward. Following the enforcement measures against Martinez and his cousin, the family's attorney, Raimundo Rosario, expressed satisfaction with the outcome and stated that the family would not pursue further investigation. Esmeralda's mother, Isabel Martinez, regretfully recalled allowing her daughter to walk with the teacher and 3 friends. She had previously spoken to the teacher on the phone, asking if he was a teacher, and he had confirmed that he was. She had trusted him to take care of her daughter, not knowing that he was a danger to her. The Ministry of Education offered support to the families of the deceased girl and the other girls who were with her on the day of the tragedy. They expressed hope that such cases would not happen again in the education community or in society. For the grieving parents, their fight for justice had just begun. A fun evening outing that included a beach visit had turned into a night of terror, resulting in the tragic death of Esmeralda Richiez, who suffered fatal injuries at the hands of the man entrusted with the care of children. Everyone involved in the evening's events bears some responsibility for what happened. Marala, however, was too afraid to confide in her parents due to their extreme strictness. We've all been there, afraid to speak up because we fear punishment or being misunderstood. But in this tragic case, fear triumphed, resulting in the devastating loss of a precious life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Catherine Wells Burr. Catherine Wells Burr was born in 1989 in the United Kingdom to parents Phil and Jane Wells Burr. She had an older sister named Lynn. During her 2010 university break, Catherine met Rafal Novak, a 31-year-old employee, on a new vacuum cleaner production line. Rafal, a tall, handsome blonde from Poland, caught her attention. He had moved to England about 4 years earlier, leaving behind a former wife and son. Catherine and Rafal started dating, initially meeting for lunch at the production site's cafe. However, their lunches soon turned into romantic dinners. Rafal wooed Catherine with thoughtful gestures, such as giving her beautiful bouquets, taking her to movies, and going on walks together. As they grew closer, Rafal opened up to Catherine about his past life and his reasons for moving to the UK. Catherine's trusting nature led her to open up completely to the blonde man, Rafal Novak. Their relationship accelerated rapidly, and within a few months, she introduced him to her parents, who warmly welcomed him into the family and hoped for their future happiness together. As their relationship blossomed, the couple began planning their wedding, which was set to take place in 2011. After graduating with honors from Bath Spa University, Catherine secured a promising job as a business analyst at Pneumatic International, the manufacturer of Henry vacuum cleaners. She quickly excelled in her career, generating job opportunities for her parents and sister. Catherine's exceptional qualities, including her intelligence, education, and people skills, made her a remarkable leader. She was empathetic towards her colleagues, always willing to lend a helping hand, and her kind gaze and radiant smile earned her the respect and admiration of those around her. As Catherine's career soared, her substantial earnings, combined with Rafal's, enabled them to purchase a spacious home with a terrace on Willow Way. Catherine and Raphael, a young couple with successful careers, bought a house with a mortgage and secured insurance coverage through their agreement with the bank. They seemed to have everything they needed for happiness. However, their lives took a dramatic turn on September 12, 2012, a day that would be a turning point in their lives. As the investigation into their lives progressed, new and surprising facts came to light. These revelations slowly exposed the deception that had been present in their relationship from the beginning. It turned out that Raphael, 29, had fled Poland to escape significant debts, leaving behind a wife and child. He moved to the UK, where he began a relationship with Anna Lovage in 2008. Later, he met Catherine Wells Burr, and for a time, he saw both women. Ultimately, he chose Catherine, seeing her as a more suitable partner for building a family and achieving financial stability. Catherine had genuine dreams of a happy marriage with the man she loved and starting a family. However, Novak, her partner, was secretly planning to murder her. He intended to use the life insurance payout and inherit their large house, which Catherine had partially paid for. On the day Catherine disappeared, Novak waited a few hours before approaching her boss, pretending to be worried and distraught. He acted convincingly, deceiving her colleagues and relatives. When Catherine could not be found at her parents' home or her own, and her car was missing, Novak fabricated a story about her receiving threatening letters from a mentally unstable admirer. Her family then contacted the police. The family gathered in the young couple's living room, waiting for Catherine's return, when they received devastating news. A burning car with a body inside had been found. Raphael described the evening before her disappearance as uneventful, saying they went for a walk, bought groceries, had dinner, and watched TV together before bedtime. Catherine seemed normal and not frightened or distressed. However, further investigation revealed that Catherine's death occurred earlier than initially thought. She was strangled around 2 a.m. while sleeping in her own bed. Her body was then placed in the car, driven a short distance from the house, and set on fire to destroy evidence. Despite this, Raphael had a solid alibi, claiming he was at work from 5:30 a.m. and Catherine was still in bed when he left. The burning car was discovered between 6 and 7 a.m., but a crucial detail emerged. Raphael was still at home at 1:30 a.m., significantly changing the direction of the case. As a result, Raphael Novak became the prime suspect in Catherine Welsber's murder. Evidence mounted against him, and he was detained for further investigation. Raphael claimed Catherine was being stalked by someone who had sent her threatening letters and driven her to hysteria. During the investigation, proof of Catherine's secret online life was uncovered, revealing accounts on adult websites and intimate exchanges with men that her loved ones knew nothing about. A letter from a secret admirer was also found, but despite attempts to hide the truth, the evidence ultimately came to light. Raphael tried to mislead the investigation, but he made a critical mistake by not destroying key evidence that linked him directly to Catherine's death. This oversight gave the prosecution a motive to pursue. Examination of Novak's phone revealed that he had ongoing communication and meetings with Anna Lovich over the past few months. Further investigation revealed that Raphael also had a financial motive. Shortly before Catherine's death, they had taken out life insurance policies worth £123,000, with each other as the sole beneficiaries. The significant life insurance payout emerged as the primary motive behind Catherine's murder, and the arson of her car, which was intended to throw off the investigation. On the day Catherine disappeared, police found a message on Anna Lovich's phone from Catherine. They also discovered that Anna and her uncle had filled a gas canister at a gas station a few days before the crime. This led them to suspect Anna and her uncle, Todd Dmitry Shin, of being involved in Catherine's disappearance and trying to cover their tracks with arson. The investigation revealed that Anna, her uncle, and a third person had planned the crime meticulously over several months. They created fake accounts on pornographic websites, uploaded doctored photos of Catherine, and fabricated conversations with men to mislead the investigation. However, when confronted with the evidence, Anna and her uncle eventually cracked and started pointing fingers at each other. Anna accused Novak of killing someone for insurance money, while Novak claimed Anna did it out of jealousy towards a rival. The true culprits crafted a deceitful narrative around an innocent young woman, Catherine. They created fake online profiles for her, suggesting she was looking for casual sexual encounters. To cover their tracks, the conspirators went to great lengths to mislead investigators. They set Catherine's body on fire and fabricated a fake history for her, portraying her as a secretive and promiscuous person with many desires. They even created the illusion of a mysterious lover who might have killed her. One of them sent a text from Catherine's phone at 5:17 a.m. on the day she died, implying she was on her way to meet this fictional person. When forensic experts investigated the car fire, they found that Catherine was wearing her favorite nightgown, not the outfit she would have worn to meet a man, as she had claimed. This discovery led them to suspect that she was attacked in her own home rather than in the car. The police also found that a pillow was missing from her bed, and the remaining pillowcase had been recently washed and hung to dry. Further investigation revealed a SIM card in Anna Laube's trash bin that was linked to the phone number Catherine had supposedly used to send texts that morning. Additionally, detectives discovered notes written by Laube, indicating that she was trying to come up with ideas for messages to make it seem like Catherine was communicating with a mysterious person. As the evidence against them mounted, Novak and Laube changed their story, claiming that Catherine's death was actually the work of a hired hitman. However, just before the trial began, Laube attempted to create a distraction by having a fellow inmate pass on a fake confession from a supposed hitman who claimed to have been paid £20,000 by Novak to kill Catherine. Rafal Novak's girlfriend Catherine was murdered, and a fictional story written by Vinovich sheds light on the gruesome details. The story claims that Catherine's body was found in the trunk of her car, and the killer, supposedly a hitman, helped Novak stage her death to look like a murder-suicide. According to the story, Novak placed Catherine's body in the driver's seat, removed the tape from her mouth, put on her shoes, buckled her seatbelt, and kissed her goodbye before setting the car on fire. In reality, Novak played the role of a grieving boyfriend to perfection, even convincing Catherine's mother, Jane, of his innocence. He told her that Catherine was receiving threatening messages from an ex-boyfriend and that she had spoken of taking her own life. Novak's act was so convincing that Catherine's parents comforted him, unaware that he was responsible for their daughter's death. In fact, Catherine's mother even hugged Novak after her death and allowed him to call her mom. She said that after the police told her in the early days of the investigation that he was seen more as a witness than a suspect, she decided to offer him all the support possible. "I thought if Catherine loved him that much, and he was part of our family, then he deserved to come back." The lengthy trial commenced under the chairmanship of Justice Sharp. The three defendants stood to gain a significant sum of money and property from Catherine Wells-Burr's death. They had planned to receive a £123,000 life insurance payout and take ownership of her two-bedroom home in Mangold, Somerset, valued at £137,000. During the trial, it was revealed that Rafal Novak showed no emotional response when the police found Catherine's body in her burned-out car on September 12th. Meanwhile, Anna Lagvinovich frequently shook her head and laughed during the proceedings, implying that Novak was responsible for the crime. However, she refused to testify in her own defense. Dmitry Sheen also chose not to take the stand. According to reports, Judge Justice Sharp delivered a scathing rebuke to the defendants, in which she characterized the murder as a terrible, merciless crime that had been cold-bloodedly committed with a gross breach of trust. Furthermore, it was reported that during sentencing, none of the three defendants displayed any emotion. Judge Sharp imposed mandatory life sentences on the three Polish nationals, with a minimum of 32 years in prison and no possibility of early release. According to Judge Sharp, the defendants had taken the life of a beautiful young woman who had everything to live for, solely for financial gain. Judge Sharp specifically rebuked Rafal Novak, saying, "The photos of you holding Catherine's hand the evening before her death and buying groceries for what you knew was her last dinner are utterly chilling. Your emotions were directed only at yourself." Turning to Anna Lagvinovich, Judge Sharp declared, "Your behavior was deceitful, manipulative, and cruel. You played your full part in this horrendous crime." The judge addressed Dmitry, stating that the murder was driven by financial gain, with aggravating circumstances and no mitigating factors. The judge emphasized that the only sympathy should be reserved for Catherine's family, including her mother Jane, father Philip, and sister Lynn, who have suffered greatly. The judge expressed deep condolences to Catherine's parents, noting that they were deceived by Rafał Nowak's facade, unaware of his true nature, which was devoid of remorse and decency. The judge reiterated that the crime was motivated by greed, as Nowak and Catherine had no personal ties, being neither married nor having children together. In contrast, the case of Anna Levinovich was driven by jealousy and a desire for revenge. At the request of the parents, Judge Justice Sharp read statements from Catherine's mother and sister. Catherine's mother was overcome with emotion in the courtroom as her statement was read, describing her daughter as a caring, loving, sincere, generous, loyal, thoughtful, exceptional, and amazing young woman. My daughter had a bright and promising future with unlimited potential. As her parents, Phil and I couldn't help but feel immense pride in the young woman she was becoming. However, our lives were forever changed by the cruel and calculated act that took Catherine's life away from us. The hatred shown to her is something that will haunt us for the rest of our lives. I'm left with the unbearable pain of never having had the chance to say goodbye, to tell her how much I love her, or to hear her say, "I love you, Mommy," one last time. Catherine Wells Burr's father, Philip, was outraged that his daughter's boyfriend, Rafał Nowak, had betrayed their trust. Nowak had been living with them and was like a son, but he was accused of murdering Catherine. Despite his innocent claims, Nowak showed no emotion when Catherine's body was found and initially didn't mention her when questioned by police. Instead, he asked for a steak dinner. Catherine's mother, Jane Wells Burr, testified that she had concerns about Nowak when he and Catherine bought a house together and took out a life insurance policy. She believed Catherine's life was in danger and that she had signed her own death warrant by signing the mortgage. In the end, the jury found Nowak guilty of murdering Catherine by suffocating her with a pillow while she slept. He had planned the murder with his secret lover, Anna Lagvinovich, and her uncle, Tavush Dmitry Shine, to claim a life insurance payout of £123,000 and a share of the house. Vinovich and Sheen helped dispose of the body by transporting it in Vinovich's car to a remote location where they set it on fire. Meanwhile, Nowak had already started his workday, providing himself with an alibi. The three Polish nationals were found guilty of the crime by the Royal Court of Bristol. The events leading up to the murder involved secret meetings and phone calls between Nowak and Vinovich, who were unaware that Catherine was involved in a love triangle. To mislead detectives, they created fake online profiles for Catherine on adult websites and sent her messages from a supposed mysterious admirer. Catherine's parents have called for stricter immigration controls following her death. They believe that if the UK had immigration rules as strict as those in the US, Nowak, who was convicted of assaulting his wife in Poland, would not have been allowed into the country. The couple blames the European Union for the current lax entry measures for foreign nationals. Jane Wells Burr emphasized that people entering the UK are not properly vetted, pointing out that they were unaware of Nowak's previous assault charge in Poland. Catherine's family members broke down in tears as the sentence was handed down in court, while the three convicted perpetrators remained emotionless. The trio received life sentences with no possibility of parole. In essence, the three immigrants from Poland had exchanged their aspirations for a successful and wealthy life for a lifetime of imprisonment due to their own actions. Following the verdict, Catherine's mother delivered a heartfelt tribute to her daughter, describing her as a beautiful girl, absolutely beautiful. She recalled her daughter's accomplishments and remembered her as determined, hardworking, and full of potential for a happy life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jake Wagner. Hannah Mae Roden, 13, met 18-year-old Edward Jake Wagner, and they became inseparable after he invited her to prom. While their love was palpable, their significant age difference raised concerns. Despite this, their parents did not intervene in their relationship. As time passed, the Roden and Wagner families grew close, often spending weekends and attending parties together. The young couple's love was carefree and passionate. When Hannah turned 15, she revealed her pregnancy, which thrilled Jake. He expected his family to be delighted with the news, as they valued tradition and family lineage. The Wagners saw the baby as a way to continue their family name, which was passed down through generations. In contrast, the Rodens had a more modest approach to family, but still prioritized their children. Hannah's parents, Christopher and Dana, remained devoted to their 3 kids despite their divorce. The Roden family's income was modest, unlike the Wagners. To celebrate Sophie's birthday, a grand party was organized shortly after. Jake proposed that Hannah move in with him and his family, claiming it would make life easier for both of them. However, Hannah refused, having come to realize that Jake was trying to control her and limit her independence. This was partly due to Jake's increasing aggression and suspicious behavior, which had already led to physical altercations on several occasions. Hannah's rejection sparked tension between the Wagners, with each of Sophie's parents determined to gain full custody of Sophie. Driven by their own interests, the families began to advocate for their own rights. Jake's anger towards Hannah peaked when she refused to sign a document granting him and his brother full custody. He even threatened her, accusing her of hiding secrets. The situation escalated when Hannah announced her second pregnancy. Although she claimed the child was fathered by another man, Jake was skeptical. In December 2015, he hacked into Hannah's social media accounts to uncover evidence of infidelity, but found none. Instead, he discovered her communication with Georgia Fort's former mother-in-law, which sparked his interest. A court case was soon to follow as a result. During a court hearing to decide where their granddaughter Sophie would live, Christopher Roden and George Wagner III got into a serious argument. This dispute marked the beginning of the end for the relationship between the two families. The Wagner family soon became convinced that Hannah, Sophie's mother, was an obstacle and that they needed to eliminate her and the entire Roden family, who could potentially gain custody of Sophie. This disturbing idea evolved into a sinister plan by Christmas 2016. While many people were celebrating the festive season with love and kindness, the Wagners held a chilling family vote to decide whether to carry out their plan. Every family member agreed to go ahead, and they began assigning roles and making preparations. Over the next 5 months, they secretly observed the Roden homes, studying their daily routines, work schedules, and surveillance cameras. On the night of April 21, 2016, George Wagner III visited Christopher Roden under the guise of offering him a job to improve his finances. This was just a ruse to get into the house. The next evening, around 8 p.m., Christopher Roden Sr. answered the door, unaware of the danger lurking. Earlier that day, Bobby Jo Manley, Dana Roden's sister, had stopped by Christopher's trailer to care for the family's animals, as she did daily since he had offered her a job. However, she noticed someone was inside, which was unusual at that time of day. Alarmed, she called emergency services, reporting what she saw and requesting help at 477 Union Hill Road. Panicked, Bobby rushed to the neighboring homes of relatives, loudly knocking on their doors. At one of the homes, she found a 3-year-old boy, Clarence's son, who didn't respond to her questions about his parents' whereabouts, only pointing towards the bed. Following the incident, the surviving children were placed in the care of relatives. The neighborhood was gripped by fear, and the police advised the Roden relatives to take precautions and warned all Pike residents to stay indoors at night. After a brutal mass murder shocked the state, the public demanded a swift and transparent investigation, urging authorities to catch the perpetrators as soon as possible. In response, businessman Jeff Ruby offered a $25,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible. However, he later withdrew the offer. An investigative task force of at least 100 individuals was formed to work on the case. Following the funerals, investigators took possession of the slain family's 3 trailers and several vehicles, transporting them to a secure facility to preserve evidence and protect the victims' belongings. The plan was to return the family's cars and farming equipment to their relatives after the investigation. Forensic experts joined the inquiry, meticulously examining the trailers, but no suspect DNA was found. Although cameras had been installed in the mobile homes, they had been disabled, leaving no useful footage. The perpetrators had clearly planned every detail carefully. Just when it seemed like there were no significant leads, detectives made a breakthrough discovery. Cannabis crops were found at 3 crime scenes. In one location, police found around 200 cannabis plants, leading them to suspect the drugs were being grown for sale, not personal use. This raised questions about potential involvement with Mexican drug traffickers, but the amount of cannabis found was too small to imply involvement with an entire cartel. A relative of the Roden family was arrested for drug trafficking in January 2017, but this was considered a coincidence. Leonard Manley, the father of Dana Roden, denied his daughter's involvement in the cannabis operation, saying that they were trying to drag Dana through the mud, and he didn't like it. Some family members confirmed that Christopher and Kenneth Roden, the older brothers, grew marijuana, but they were unaware of any large-scale operation. The theory that a family feud over illegally obtained money was behind the murders was also disproven. At the Rodens' property, authorities discovered not only banned substances, but also specialized equipment used for breeding fighting chickens and cages containing animals trained for combat. Although these findings initially led investigators to suspect illegal animal fights might be connected to the homicide, it soon became apparent that this was not the case. Despite months of investigation, the true motive behind the crime remained a mystery. By April 13, 2017, local authorities officially announced that they lacked sufficient evidence to make any arrests. However, prosecutor Rob Young insisted that the investigation was still active, implying that they had some promising leads that they were not yet ready to reveal. As the second anniversary of the mass crime approached, the case received little attention from the local media, and neither the sheriff nor the prosecutor attended the memorial service, leading the community to suspect that the investigation had stalled. On May 12, 2017, a surprising turn of events occurred when a SWAT team raided a home in Pike County, just 10 miles from the scene of the crime. Initially, they were looking for suspects, but it was later revealed that their true intention was to gather evidence. Additionally, detectives searched a house in Adams County that had previously belonged to Jake Wagner, although he had already sold it by that time. Approximately a month later, on June 20, 2017, the focus of the investigation officially shifted towards the Wagner family. 26-year-old Jake, 27-year-old George III, 47-year-old George IV, and 48-year-old Angela, who lived 15 miles from the victims, were under scrutiny. The Wagners had moved to Alaska, citing difficulties staying in the area, claiming to have loved the Roden family and stating their deaths caused them immense suffering. Rob Young's words from a year earlier proved true, as the investigation had made a breakthrough and was now seeking information from the public on the Wagners' discussions about firearms, ammunition, vehicles, etc. 2 years prior, it wasn't long before the suspects, running low on funds, returned to Ohio, where detectives had gathered enough evidence for arrests, including proving Jake had hacked into Hannah's account during the examination of the Wagner family's devices. Search queries related to guardianship were discovered. It was also found that Angela had purchased sneakers for the entire family just a few weeks before the crime. The tread pattern of one of these matched that found in one of the trailers. Officers believed Angela was the mastermind behind the horrific scheme, with Jake as the primary executive. According to the investigation, each family member was involved in the criminal act. On November 13, 2018, the Attorney General announced the arrest of the Wagner couple, as well as their sons, who were charged with planning and carrying out the termination of life. Rita Newcomb, Angela's 65-year-old mother, and Frida Wagner, George III's mother, were arrested and charged with perjury and obstructing justice. In 2019, Rita Newcomb underwent handwriting analysis, which proved her involvement in forging a document related to Sophie's guardianship. She struck a plea deal to avoid imprisonment. The charges against Frida Wagner were later dropped in June 2019. The other Wagners refused to cooperate with the investigation and denied any involvement in the Rodens' deaths, expressing sorrow and wishing for the real perpetrators to be caught. However, in April 2021, 5 years after the incident, Jake Wagner decided to make a deal with the prosecution. Under the agreement, he would provide details of the crime in exchange for life sentences for all family members instead of the death penalty. Jake Wagner Jr. admitted to killing 5 people and pleaded guilty to 23 criminal charges, including aggravated murder, burglary, conspiracy, and other crimes. To ensure his daughter Hannah wouldn't be taken away, he thought killing her mother was the only solution. He believed that if he didn't also kill the Rodens, they would seek revenge and fight for custody of Hannah. Angela, who had been involved in the conspiracy, pleaded guilty to several charges on September 10th, including conspiracy, robbery, and evidence tampering. In exchange for her cooperation, the charge of murder was dropped. She received a 30-year prison sentence. George Wagner IV went on trial on August 28, 2022. Despite denying any involvement in the crimes, claiming he was unaware of what was happening, the prosecution presented evidence of his role in planning, executing, and covering up the crimes. He was found guilty on 22 counts and sentenced to life in prison without parole. George Wagner III's trial is set for February 2024. Despite his family members being convicted, he still maintains his innocence, but likely faces the same fate as his son. The once peaceful relationship between the Wagners and Rodens ended in tragedy, driven by a collective and incomprehensible madness. The consequences of their actions left 3 children without parents. As Sophie grows up, she will one day realize what happened, and it's hard to imagine how she will cope with that knowledge. The Wagners' bitter custody battle had a devastating impact on her, denying her the love and support of her parents, relatives, and a stable upbringing. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of John Thomas McGuire. Life in an orphanage is difficult and unpredictable. You have no personal space, no control over your time, and if you're not able to stand up for yourself, you're likely to be bullied by the older kids. Amanda and Anna Marie McClure, however, were a little more fortunate because they had each other. With 2 of them, they were more able to defend themselves. The sisters preferred to keep to themselves and didn't try to make friends with anyone else. They were hopeful that their stay in the orphanage would be short-lived. They believed that their mother would soon find out that their father, Larry McClure, was in prison and that she would come to take them away. It was impossible to keep their father's imprisonment a secret. The news was all over TV and in the newspapers for a long time. As time passed, days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. Unfortunately, it became clear that they might not be returning home anytime soon. One day, the sisters intervened to protect a new girl, Meredith, from being bullied. Meredith had a difficult past, having lived with a mother who was addicted to drugs. She was very thin, scared, and would jump at the slightest noise. After her mother died of an overdose, Meredith was too afraid to call for help and ended up in the orphanage. Amanda and Anna Marie kept the reason for their presence a secret, brushing it off when Meredith asked about it with a fabricated story about a policeman father who died in the line of duty. However, the truth eventually emerged that their father was not a deceased police officer, but a living criminal serving time in prison for violent sexual crimes against a young girl. This revelation made their lives a living hell. Luckily, The sisters soon got a second chance when two separate families adopted them almost simultaneously, allowing them to start anew. Unfortunately, this meant they would be separated and lose touch with each other. There is no information available about the sisters' experiences in their foster homes. What is known is that Amanda, 29 at the time, met her future husband, John McGuire, now 38. Her adoptive parents had worried that Amanda would remain single forever, given her lack of biological family and the emotional trauma of her mother's betrayal. Larry McClure, the father, was released on parole and returned to Virginia, where he lived in a mobile home. He was determined to reconnect with his daughters. First, he visited Amanda's foster parents, Guam and Alex, and introduced himself, asking to see Amanda and requesting her contact information. At the time, Larry was dishonest about Anna Marie's whereabouts, claiming she lived in North Carolina, 186 miles away, when in fact, he had never seen or spoken to her. Despite this, Larry was able to meet with Amanda, and their reunions eventually led to him introducing her and her friend John to illegal drugs that he manufactured in his camper. The tragic events unfolded on Valentine's Day. John, who was still recovering from the effects of drug abuse and was deeply in love with Amanda, decided to surprise her with a romantic evening at home. However, during the meal, John's affectionate words to Amanda made Larry extremely anxious, causing tension to build. Larry stopped his son-in-law John from speaking and asked if he could be completely honest with his wife Amanda. John agreed, and Larry suggested a game. John's legs were tied, and he was asked to answer all questions about his life truthfully. At first, the questions were harmless, but as Larry became more intoxicated, he started accusing John of being an undercover FBI agent. 3 weeks later, Larry and Amanda got married. To keep their relationship a secret, Larry changed his name. The new family decided to start fresh in Kentucky, vowing to quit illegal substances for good. To blend in with their neighbors, they even hung a U.S. flag on their rented house's door. By 2019, John's family, including his ex-wife and parents, had become worried because they hadn't heard from him. John's mother even went so far as to file a missing person report with the police. Meanwhile, Larry was in trouble with the law again. He had failed to notify the authorities that he had moved to a different state, which violated the terms of his probation. As a result, he was sent back to prison. Larry's mental state had deteriorated significantly due to his long history of substance abuse and mixing drugs with alcohol. Suddenly finding himself in a place where he couldn't access these substances triggered withdrawal symptoms, including increased anxiety and a blurred sense of reality. It's likely that this led him to make irrational decisions, such as marrying his own daughter. Larry became convinced that the real reason for his parole violation was to search for John's body, which he believed was buried in his backyard. He urgently needed to get a message to his daughters, Plaudard, Amanda, or Anna Marie, to dig up the body parts and rebury them in a different location. However, all prison calls are monitored, so he had to find a way to convey this information discreetly. Larry meticulously prepared a speech, considering every detail, but was prohibited from making any phone calls. Despite this, he eventually couldn't resist and confessed to the duty officer, although his intentions remain unclear. Larry's reasoning was that if he confessed to the murder before being charged, he might avoid the death penalty, and if he implicated his daughters, that would be even better. However, the officer was initially skeptical, wondering what Larry was talking about. Why would this addict incriminate himself? Nevertheless, the officer was required by law to investigate Larry's claims. Initially, the officer intended to perform a cursory verification, simply confirming that a statement had been made and the alleged crime scene had been checked, but finding nothing. However, it was discovered that John was indeed missing, and as a precaution, a police unit was sent to Larry's residence. Upon searching the area, they found traces of lime, just as Larry had mentioned, and soon every aspect of his confession was corroborated. The McClure sisters were promptly apprehended. Amanda and Anna Marie were stunned when their father and husband, Larry, confessed to a brutal murder. Their shock turned to disbelief when Larry tried to shift the blame, testifying that his daughters were responsible for the crime and he was an unwitting participant. As the family's story unraveled, each member attempted to distance themselves from the crime, claiming it was an accident. John's relatives were especially grief-stricken, as they had to come to terms with the fact that his body was never found, only remains. These remains had to be retrieved from forensic experts and transported to his parents for burial in a closed coffin. Despite the challenges, John's parents were able to lay him to rest, thanks to the help of friends who contributed financially, assisted with transportation, and made funeral arrangements. John was finally laid to rest at a Lutheran church on October 25, 2019. On February 15, the day after Valentine's Day, a member of the McClure family posted a message on John's Facebook page, pretending it was from him. The message said he was going on a trip and would be out of touch for a long time, and asked his friends not to worry about his extended absence. This was a tactic to mislead everyone, as the family knew they were about to kill John and didn't want to arouse suspicion. Despite the heinous nature of their crime, during the trial, Larry and Amanda received an additional 6 months in their sentence due to their incestuous marriage, which is illegal in their state. The trial began, and Larry was given the floor. He stated that he had felt remorse for his own children for most of his life. He admitted that when they were very young, he had committed a serious crime that put them in an orphanage. He explained that their birth mother had abandoned them, and he was the only one who had a heartache for his little ones. He expressed his extreme gratitude to the people who had adopted his babies. He said he would not hide, and even attended churches and prayed for their adoptive parents when he got out. He confessed that he had crazily wanted to make up for all the years he had missed. He confessed that he could have walked away from the crime if he had convinced Amanda not to do it, but he didn't. He admitted that the judge and jury would probably not understand him, and he shared their point of view, but emphasized that they weren't in his shoes. He mentioned that John was a fine young man and expressed his regret for John. He stated that if he could, he would turn things around, but no one could raise the dead, and he couldn't say no to Amanda, his favorite and youngest daughter, who didn't care about John. All Amanda wanted was to be able to withdraw government money from John's account. The trial went on for a very long time as the defendants flip-flopped back and forth on the decision to kill John. Amanda, who could not tolerate such a long trial, even made a deal with the investigators where she was promised to be charged with involuntary manslaughter at the next trial. Larry had given a very different speech when it all started, stating that the four of them had bought the ingredients to make illegal substances and went back to his trailer where he had started making them. Amanda had come up to him and said she wanted to get back at John. He explained that John, under the influence of drugs, had raped Anna Marie, who then got pregnant, and that he had to earn the trust of his daughters after all those years apart, so he couldn't refuse. Larry blamed himself for that and thought every day that he should hang himself, but questioned why it should be him if the crime was their fault. After Larry's speech, John's family got the floor. His mother sobbed non-stop, so much so that she couldn't say a word. She expressed that even if she could ever forgive the McClure family, she would never be able to forget what happened. She also conveyed that she wished she could live to see the day when one of them died before her. John's children were given a chance to speak, and they vehemently cursed the killers, declaring that they would never forgive them. The judge then delivered the final verdict, sentencing Larry McClure to life in prison without parole. When Amanda's punishment was announced, her adoptive parents were filled with regret, revealing to her that her biological father had been searching for her. They had raised her to have freedom of choice, but unaware that this freedom could have such severe consequences on her future. Amanda, however, shifted the blame to her biological father, claiming that his jealousy had driven her to commit the crime. Her adoptive parents pleaded with the judge to consider the negative influence of her biological father, arguing that their adopted daughter would not have committed such a brutal crime without it. Nevertheless, the prosecutors viewed the murder as a premeditated conspiracy, orchestrated so that Amanda and Larry could be together as a couple. The first hearing focused on Amanda, who received a 40-year sentence. However, the judge predicted she would likely serve only 20 years. During Anna Marie's hearing, she attempted to demonstrate her opposition to John's murder, but felt coerced by her father and sister to see it through. She only attended Larry and Amanda's wedding out of fear for her own future. Ultimately, Anna Marie was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Lin family. The Lin family's story is a heart-wrenching tale of love, ambition, and tragedy that began in the late 1980s. Min Lin and Yunli Lin, both Chinese nationals, met at an Australian university where they were pursuing higher education. Min had stayed on after completing his degree for a professional internship, while Yun had arrived through an exchange program. Their chance encounter in a university corridor sparked an instant attraction, which they later described as love at first sight. As foreigners in a new land, they shared a deep connection, united by their dreams of building a new life in Australia. After graduating, the couple married and settled down in the peaceful suburb of North Epping in Sydney. Their love flourished, and they built a close-knit family, deeply committed to each other. In August 1994, they welcomed their first child, June Brenda Lin, who went by her middle name Brenda. Two more children followed, Henry in 1997 and Terry in 2000. As the family entered the 2000s, Min and Yun decided to start a business venture, opening a small newsstand together. Through hard work and dedication, they turned their humble beginning into a successful news agency with a publishing branch on Rose Street. As their business thrived, they were able to afford a comfortable lifestyle, complete with a spacious home, a luxury car, and exclusive private schooling for their children. Min focused on managing the business, while Yun dedicated herself to taking care of their home and raising their kids. The community highly respected the Lins for their hard work, kindness, and charitable nature. They were known for being exemplary, caring parents who avoided conflicts. Their children were outstanding in their own ways. Brenda, the eldest, was a stunning beauty and an exceptional student with a passion for helping animals. Henry and Terry, the boys, were energetic and sports enthusiasts, sharing a love for soccer. The siblings were incredibly close, almost inseparable. As the Lin family's prosperity grew, they began to sponsor relatives from China to visit, live, or even settle in Australia permanently. Min's parents were the first to make the move, settling in North Epping and helping with the kids. Min's father also worked part-time at their newsstand on weekends. Later, Yun's parents also moved to the same Sydney suburb, and Min and Yun bought them a small house. Yun's sister, Irene, joined the Lin household, helping with chores and childcare. By this time, the Lin family business had become very successful, earning almost $1 million per year. It had become a popular gathering place where people would come to read, discuss news, and socialize over coffee. In late 2007, Min Lin's younger sister, Kathy Lin, and her husband, Lang Bin Robert, moved to Sydney seeking better opportunities. They had previously visited relatives in Australia and had briefly lived in Melbourne before returning to China. This time, they were determined to settle in Australia for good. Robert, a former successful ear, nose, and throat doctor in China, decided to try his hand at entrepreneurship. Kathy and Robert invested all their savings into opening their own restaurant in Sydney, but unfortunately it struggled and eventually closed. Their subsequent attempts to open a cafe or snack bar also failed. Robert, who lacked business experience and financial management skills, struggled to succeed in his new ventures. Robert and Kathy moved to North Epping to be closer to their family. Kathy found a job, but Robert was still trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. The Lynn and Z families were close, not just because they were related, but also because they were good friends. They saw each other almost every day, kept in touch constantly, and often had meals together. The last time they all got together was on the evening of July 17, 2009, at Kathy and Min's parents' house. Unfortunately, they didn't know it would be their last time together. The next morning, July 18th, the Lynn family's shop didn't open, which was unusual because it was always open 7 days a week. The shop didn't have any signs or notices on the door saying it would be closed, which worried the regular customers and other shop owners in the area. One of them tried to call Min several times, but couldn't get through, so they called Kathy to ask her what was going on. Kathy was surprised and worried because her brother Min never closed the shop without telling anyone first, and usually had their father or father-in-law cover for him. She tried calling Min and his wife Yun, but they didn't answer. She even tried calling their home phone, but no one picked up. Kathy and her husband Robert visited Min's house, worried about the family's safety. They arrived at 9 a.m. to find the family car in the driveway and the front door unlocked, but no one was responding to their calls. The house was quiet and seemed undisturbed, with no signs of forced entry. As Kathy called out for her brother again, she went upstairs to the second floor. When she opened the bedroom door of Min and Yunlin, she was shocked and horrified by what she saw. The room was covered in blood. On the floor, walls, ceiling, furniture, and curtains. Yunlin's lifeless body lay near the bed, so badly mutilated that it was hard to recognize. In the next room, Irene, Yun's sister, lay dead in her bed, her face brutally beaten. In the children's bedrooms, Kathy found the bodies of 12-year-old Henry and 9-year-old Terry, both brutally beaten to death and lying in different corners of the room. Brenda, the 15-year-old daughter, was fortunate to be away on a school trip the previous day and avoided being at home during the tragic events. When Kathy discovered the carnage, she immediately called emergency services, but her frantic state made it difficult for her to provide clear information. She begged for medical help to arrive quickly, hoping to save anyone who might still be alive. Unfortunately, the first responders who arrived at the scene confirmed the deaths of all the victims. The next morning, a disturbing discovery was made after Kathy's emergency call. Robert went to fetch Brenda's grandparents, who lived about 10 kilometers away, while the police and paramedics rushed to the scene. What they found was soon classified as one of the most horrific crime scenes they had ever encountered. The Lynn family was tragically killed, each member suffering multiple blows to the head from a heavy blunt object, similar to a hammer. The murder weapon was not found at the scene. It appeared that the killer struck the father first, followed by the mother, her sister, and finally the two boys. Initially, investigators found no significant clues, and the fact that valuables and money were left untouched suggested that the primary motive was to eliminate the family rather than rob them. Initially, it seemed unlikely that one person could overpower the entire family, and multiple suspects were suspected. However, evidence revealed that the children were awake during the attack and had tried to escape, leaving behind bloodstains and splatters throughout the house. Further investigation showed that the adult victims, in addition to head injuries, also suffered signs of strangulation, possibly to minimize resistance during the assault. The killer left behind identical bloody shoe prints in each room with a unique tread pattern, but the shoe brand and owner could not be identified, only the shoe size. Notably, no foreign fingerprints were found, suggesting that the killer wore gloves. The Lynn family massacre investigation initially yielded no leads or suspects, despite the family having no known enemies. The attack occurred between midnight and 3 a.m. on July 18th. Brenda Lynn, the sole survivor and eldest child, was on a school trip to New Caledonia at the time. She was informed of the tragedy through social media, but initially disbelieved it, hoping it was a mistake. Her aunt Kathy called and confirmed the news, and Brenda was flown back to Sydney, where her new guardians, Kathy and Robert, met her. She moved in with them as the Lynn family home was sealed as a crime scene. The next day, Brenda was questioned by the police but could provide no new information, insisting her family had no enemies and had noticed nothing unusual before her trip. After her family's death, Brenda inherited the family business and properties. As she was still a minor, her Aunt Kathy and Uncle Robert became her legal guardians, responsible for managing the estate on her behalf. Although her grandparents offered to help, Kathy and Robert wanted to care for her, and the matter was resolved amicably. The family's shop and publishing business reopened under Robert's management. As Brenda was not yet ready to take over, Robert reviewed the family's financial assets, including bank accounts and properties. Experts examined the crime scene, but despite their efforts, found no concrete leads, suggesting the killer likely acted alone and entered the house quietly. The killer wore distinctive size 9.5 shoes with an ornate tread pattern, used a hammer as the weapon, and wore gloves, preventing fingerprint evidence. The lack of foreign DNA and bloodstains on the doorknobs of each bedroom where the crimes occurred indicated the killer's bloody gloves touched them, except for Brenda's room, suggesting the killer was aware of her absence. The tragic incident received widespread media coverage, but despite this, no substantial evidence or suspects emerged. Rumors and theories circulated, including the Lynn family's supposed wealth being the motive, a bungled robbery, or involvement by local Chinese mafia clans. While these theories were not entirely dismissed, they were later deemed unlikely due to a lack of evidence. As the investigation continued, none of the theories were proven, and no suspects came forward. The robbery theory was eventually ruled out when it became clear the killer's sole intention was to eliminate the household members, leaving behind untouched money and valuables. The power outage in the house suggests the killer was familiar with the location of the electrical panel and had likely been in the house before, possibly having obtained a key in advance. After thoroughly reviewing the case details, an investigator re-listened to Kathy's emergency call and finally discovered a significant hint in the recording. A 911 call recorded Kathy's desperate attempts to explain the situation, her words interspersed with cries and sobs. At the end of the call, Kathy surprisingly addressed her husband directly in Cantonese, saying she didn't want to be left alone in the house. This caught the investigators' attention, and they translated her words. This was significant because Robert had chosen to pick up his in-laws himself, leaving Kathy alone at the crime scene before the police arrived. His behavior seemed highly suspicious, as 5 people had just been brutally taken away from the house, and the killer could still have been hiding inside. The police discovered that Robert had a key to his brother-in-law's house, which he had been given just before the tragedy. He never mentioned this during questioning. Kathy was unaware of this fact, but Brenda unintentionally revealed it to the investigators. Further inquiry exposed Robert's false claim of being a successful ear, nose, and throat doctor. He had a medical degree, but never had a steady job in the field. There were rumors that he fled to Australia to escape punishment for alleged bribery charges in China. After settling in North America, Robert became financially dependent on his wife's income and occasional financial help from Kathy's relatives. Once the guardianship papers for Brenda were finalized, Robert behaved as if he had inherited the Lynn family's entire estate. He forced Yun's parents out of the house that Min had bought for them, though it was legally under the deceased name. Considering these facts and circumstances, investigators believed Robert was motivated by jealousy of his wife's wealthy and successful relatives and had long planned to take their property, money, and business. The police couldn't arrest Robert yet because they lacked concrete evidence against him. They obtained permission to install hidden cameras in the Z household, hoping to gather evidence to prove Robert's guilt. The breakthrough came when Kathy mentioned her husband's preference for a specific brand of shoes during an interrogation. Robert had bought 2 pairs of limited edition sneakers years earlier and still had a pair in its box at home, Significantly, Robert wore size 9.5 shoes, the same size as the killers. Hidden cameras caught Robert destroying the box containing the shoes. This led to a search warrant for Robert's home, where a new pair of size 9.5 sneakers was found. The tread pattern on these shoes matched the prints found at the crime scene. Moreover, a small smear of blood was discovered in his garage. Forensic analysis confirmed that the smear was indeed a blood stain containing the DNA of all 5 Lynn family victims, directly linking it to the crime scene. This evidence led to Robert's arrest, providing the concrete proof the police needed to take action. In May 2011, 2 years after the tragedy, the evidence led to Robert's arrest. Despite his vehement denials of involvement, the police had finally gathered enough evidence to take action. Robert downplayed the importance of the sneakers found in his possession, claiming they were new and that he had gotten rid of the old pair. While awaiting trial in prison, he unknowingly shared cells with several informants and made some incriminating statements. During one conversation, Robert revealed that he had meticulously planned the crime and taken great care to cover his tracks. He admitted to buying the murder weapon at a remote store without surveillance cameras and drugging his wife with sedatives to prevent her from waking up and noticing his absence. Robert also confessed to disposing of the evidence, including the hammer, sneakers, gloves, and clothing, in a way that would ensure they would never be found. At the trial, however, Robert denied all of this, and the only evidence against him was the testimony from his cellmates and some indirect evidence. As a result, the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict, and Robert was released on bail in December 2015. The trial resumed in June 2016 with new testimony from another informant who claimed that Robert had confessed to an obsession with Brenda since she was 13 years old. This new information led to a re-examination of Brenda, who tearfully revealed that Robert had coerced her into a sexual relationship when she was just 13. She had remained silent about the abuse for years, fearing retaliation. With this new evidence, Robert was found guilty on all charges. He received 5 life sentences, 1 for each murder, without the possibility of parole. All of his subsequent appeals were denied. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Stephen Freeman. Stephen Andrew Freeman was born on January 1, 1995, in Thomason, Georgia, to Troy and Jennifer Freeman. He and his brother Blake grew up in a happy and healthy environment with no major issues with their parents or society. Stephen was known for being kind, responsive, and calm, which helped him make many friends. Stephen attended Spalding High School and later studied at Gordon State College in Griffin, Georgia. Mary Catherine Higdon, his future partner, came from a respectable family and was raised with a carefree and humorous spirit. She was creative and enjoyed putting on mini plays for her family and neighbors. Stephen and Mary fell deeply in love during their senior year and remained inseparable. They shared many common interests, including a love for nature, hiking, fishing, and hunting. In 2012, Stephen updated his Facebook status to reflect his relationship with Mary, and the couple frequently posted photos together. Both families accepted each other's children, and after completing their education, the young couple moved in together. Stephen worked as a plumber, while Mary was a teacher's assistant and part-time salesperson. By summer 2018, Stephen and Mary had been living together for 7 years, but they had not yet gotten married. On August 1, 2018, at 10:42 p.m., Mary called emergency services in a state of panic. She reported that she had accidentally shot her boyfriend while handling a Glock 43 firearm, unaware that it was loaded. When paramedics and police arrived, Mary was in shock, kneeling beside Stephen's motionless body, crying and begging for help. She was eventually pulled away, allowing the officers to examine Stephen and provide first aid. Despite being shot in the chest, Stephen was still breathing and was rushed to Spalding Regional Hospital. Sadly, he died just before midnight. In shock and struggling to comprehend the tragedy, Mary visited the police station to give her account of the events. She claimed that the shot was accidental, explaining that there were always firearms in their home for self-defense, and that Stephen would often leave a pistol on the nightstand before sleep. On the fateful evening in question, Mary Catherine claimed she only intended to hand Stephen the pistol, but it accidentally discharged. She insisted she didn't know the gun was loaded and would never harm Stephen, the love of her life, intentionally. However, investigators discovered signs of a struggle in the kitchen, with food and dishes scattered everywhere. Detectives Adam Trammell and Chris Wilson found Mary's story highly unlikely and decided to investigate further. They questioned Mary again, using pressure tactics to get to the truth. Eventually, Mary confessed to shooting Stephen in anger during an argument. She revealed that she wanted to leave him, and the argument escalated. The investigators recorded the conversation, but unfortunately, most of the recording was lost due to technical issues. Further investigation showed that the pistol couldn't have fired accidentally, as it required a deliberate trigger pull. Moreover, the bullet's trajectory indicated that the pistol was pointed directly at Stephen. The detectives also questioned Mary's behavior, suspecting she was overacting and exaggerating her distress. It was also revealed that Mary worked at a gun store where she received thorough training on handling firearms. This meant she knew how to safely handle the pistol, making the accidental discharge scenario unlikely. The investigation uncovered inconsistencies in Mary's statements, including a claim that she tossed the pistol to Stephen, causing it to discharge. This contradicted her initial statement that she was simply handing him the pistol when it fired. Mary's changing statements worked against her, suggesting she was lying and trying to conceal her guilt. She was detained and charged with multiple crimes, including felony murder and aggravated assault. During the trial, Lieutenant Wilson disputed Mary's claim of an accident, instead arguing that she had planned and executed the crime deliberately. A key piece of evidence was the presence of cooking grease on the pistol's slide, which Mary explained was due to her preparing dinner for Stephen that evening. Friends and relatives of the couple described their complicated and tumultuous relationship, marked by frequent arguments and instances of Mary threatening to harm Stephen or herself with a weapon. Despite the complexities of the case, the evidence ultimately pointed to Mary's guilt. Stephen and Mary Catherine had a tumultuous relationship, with many weapons present in their home. 2 days before the tragedy on July 30th, 2018, they exchanged warm messages wishing each other a good day. However, the next day, Stephen told his mother he wouldn't return home to that devil and stayed at his friend Thomas's place. On August 1st, 2018, when Stephen didn't come home, Mary sent him hundreds of messages begging him to return. She prepared dinner and waited for him, later learning he was at Thomas's place and going to pick him up. They encountered each other on the road, and Mary shouted that she was waiting for him at home for dinner. Stephen replied that he was coming home. However, the evening ended in tragedy instead of a reconciliatory dinner. The police initially believed the case was a premeditated act driven by Mary's anger, but her defense team revealed a different side to their relationship. At her trial on June 17, 2019, Mary Catherine Higdon refused a plea deal for life imprisonment, insisting she couldn't harm Stephen because he was the love of her life. Mary claimed the incident was an accident and that she loved Stephen. She also accused him of abusive behavior, stating that he hit her twice and forced himself on her on the day of the tragedy. Friends and relatives testified that Mary was furious because Stephen often ignored her messages and calls. On the night of the incident, Stephen refused to eat the dinner Mary had prepared, which was the final straw for her. She couldn't hold back and fired at him. The prosecution presented physical evidence, including grease on the pistol and a sheet with bloodstains, showing that Stephen was not attacking Mary, but was sitting still on the bed when she shot him. In court, Mary finally gave a truthful testimony, describing Stephen as a harsh and controlling tyrant who had repeatedly hit, shaken, and threatened her. She confessed that he had constantly controlled and manipulated her, driving her to despair with unreasonable jealousy. The defense presented ample evidence to support her claims, including text messages that raised questions about who was the real tyrant and betrayer in the relationship. Stephen's message snippets suggested that he had insulted Mary Catherine and threatened her. However, what really sparked his anger was more disturbing. According to his friends, Stephen was furious with his girlfriend because he believed she had been unfaithful, which Mary denied. Mary Catherine claimed that Stephen had assaulted her twice before, and she feared he would hurt her again on August 1, 2018. That's why she took action in self-defense. The defense presented an expert and close relatives of Mary who could testify to the domestic violence. Mary's sister, Sarah Higdon, confirmed that she saw bruises on Mary's arm 2 weeks before the shooting, though she regrets not taking a photo and initially believing Mary's explanation that the bruises were accidental. A tearful Mary Higdon told the jury that on the night of the incident, she decided to end things with Stephen once and for all, telling him to leave the house. Stephen became enraged, attacked her, and in self-defense, she grabbed the pistol from the nightstand, accidentally firing it. After Mary Catherine gave emotional testimony, the prosecution and defense teams clashed with Stephen's former friends, who had been close to Mary for years, as they tried to portray their deceased friend in a positive light. Thomas Skinner, Stephen's best friend, described Stephen as a loyal and hard-working country boy, while portraying Mary Catherine as an obsessive and possessive girlfriend who constantly controlled and stalked him. According to Thomas, Mary Catherine and Stephen's relationship had become toxic over time, with Mary threatening to end her life whenever Stephen tried to leave her. He also claimed that during an argument, Mary had once pointed a pistol at her head in front of Stephen. Another witness, Alicia Varela, who worked with Stephen, testified that Mary would obsessively call Stephen throughout the day, even when he was at work. However, during her court testimony, Mary omitted a crucial detail that prosecutor Kate Lenhard highlighted. While Mary described their interactions and how their relationship had deteriorated into physical abuse, she never mentioned the moment when she claimed to have acted in self-defense and pulled the trigger. Prosecutor Kate Lenhard was skeptical of Mary's admission, pointing out that during cross-examination, Mary never mentioned being mistreated by Stephen. Lenhard repeatedly asked Mary if a woman who felt safe at home would confront her attacker late at night and bring him back home, but Mary's response was unconvincing. Lenhard then recreated the events of the accidental shooting as she believed they occurred. According to her version, Stephen came home, and after listening to Mary, they got into an argument because he refused to eat dinner. Enraged, Mary threw the prepared food around the kitchen. Stephen tried to avoid further conflict by going to the bedroom and sitting on the bed, likely waiting for Mary to calm down. However, Mary was determined to confront him, calling out to him twice without getting a response. She then entered the bedroom and shot Stephen in the left side of his neck. Kate Lenhard pointed out the inconsistencies in Stephen Freeman's stories during police interrogations and court hearings, highlighting the contradictions in his accounts. Mary Catherine Higdon provided an emotional testimony about the alleged abuse she suffered at the hands of Stephen Freeman. However, before handing the case over to the jury, Kate Lenhard urged them to consider the possibility that Mary Higdon was not acting in self-defense, but rather was a mastermind of manipulation. The prosecution presented additional evidence and counter-arguments despite the lost confession recording. A forensic examination showed that Stephen Freeman was sitting on the bed at the time of the shooting, making it impossible for him to have been attacking Mary Higdon. Furthermore, while Mary claimed that the gun was always kept unloaded, detectives suspected that the pistol was actually loaded on the evening of August 1, 2018, when Mary was preparing a rope for Stephen. Here's a clearer explanation. The presence of grease marks on the slide and inside the pistol led investigators to suspect that Mary Catherine might have loaded the pistol beforehand. However, those who knew Stephen Freeman, including colleagues, neighbors, family friends, and acquaintances, consistently described him as non-aggressive. Meanwhile, Mary Catherine changed her story at least 10 times during the investigation, which prosecutors attributed to fear. Mary Catherine rejected a plea deal because she was facing a potential death sentence. As the jury deliberated, they heard from all the witnesses and the accused. After just 10 minutes, the jury was ready to deliver their verdict, but 2 jurors had lingering doubts about the prosecution's case. These jurors felt that the investigators, in their eagerness to charge Mary Catherine with premeditated murder, had overlooked crucial facts. They were particularly concerned that the prosecution had failed to thoroughly investigate Stephen Freeman's phone, including his text messages and browsing history. Ultimately, the only significant evidence against Mary Catherine was her own lies, which weren't enough to prove her guilt. The jurors' arguments, particularly those of Victor and Chris, had a significant impact. After deliberating, the jury returned a unanimous verdict of not guilty, freeing Mary Catherine Higdon after a lengthy process. The 12 jurors reached the following conclusions. They found the defendant not guilty on the first charge of malicious action and the second charge of serious action. The judge subsequently acquitted Mary Catherine Higdon of all charges, including intentional action, reckless action, assault with a deadly weapon, and carrying a weapon during the commission of a crime. The verdict shocked many in the courtroom, including Jennifer Freeman, who struggled to contain her anger towards the jurors. Those supporting Stephen's family were also stunned by the outcome. Following her acquittal, Mary Catherine returned home to Griffin to be with her family. Since then, she has maintained a low profile, avoiding social media to evade unwanted media and public attention. Mary Catherine's Instagram profile is private, and there is no information available about her current location. It is believed that she has moved on from her difficult past and is now living a quiet, private life. Stephen Freeman's mother paid tribute to her son on social media, remembering him as a kind and loving person. He lived a life full of love, joy, and friendship, and everyone who knew him considered him a friend. He especially cherished the relationships he made while hunting and fishing. Stephen had a special way of showing love and care to those around him. He made people feel seen and heard, often making them laugh until they cried. He was always smiling, hugging, and staying close to those he cared about. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ronell Burns. Kiana was born on September 15, 1977, in St. Louis, Missouri. After graduating from Riverview Garden High School, she attended St. Louis Community College in Florissant Valley, where she studied cosmetology. She soon turned her passion into a successful business, opening her own beauty salon, which became popular thanks to her hard work and dedication. Over the next 20 years, Kiana's salon grew to become one of the largest in the St. Louis area, a testament to her persistence and entrepreneurial spirit. However, her personal life was not without its challenges. Despite her success, Kiana struggled to find a suitable partner until she met her future husband, Ronell Burns, at the age of 44. Prior to meeting Ronell, Kiana had 3 children from previous relationships, whom she loved deeply. Her family and friends describe her as a loving mother, supportive friend, and accomplished businesswoman. Ronell Burns was born on May 14, 1975, in St. Louis, Missouri. He graduated from the High School of Fashion in 1994, where he excelled in basketball and competed for a state championship. Ronell was driven, ambitious, and passionate about competition, always striving for greatness. Before meeting Kiana, Ronell had 2 children from a previous relationship. When they met, they brought together their strong work ethics and ambition, creating a new, happy family. On September 13, 2012, Ronell and Kiana got married in a beautiful wedding surrounded by relatives and friends. After the wedding, Keanu discovered a new side of Ronell. It turned out that Ronell had dedicated his life to Jesus Christ at a young age and wanted to serve the Lord. He began helping anyone he could, including people he met on the street. Ronell even created a website where he coached and preached to spread his message. Ronell believed that God spoke to him in his early years, instructing him to help others. He interpreted one of these calls to mean that sometimes God chooses to communicate with everyone, and only He can allow certain events to occur in life. Ronell pursued his ministry, and his video messages gained immense popularity online. In addition to his impactful work as a church coach, Ronell was a financial counselor and insurance agent. He founded Traditional Financial Solutions, a company dedicated to helping people worldwide achieve financial independence. Ronell achieved great success in his business and humanitarian efforts, and his speeches drew large crowds. His wife, Kiana, supported him, and together they gained popularity online. Ronell was already well established as a leader and coach in the Six-Figure Ambition program, an online initiative for entrepreneurs. He had a substantial following on social media, with over 7,000 fond followers on Instagram and 2,000 subscribers on his educational YouTube channel. By combining their business skills and family values, Ronell and Kiana Burns created something remarkable that positively impacted thousands of people. Kiana was a motivational speaker who shared her insights on success at business events. She also had a strong online presence, with 14,000 followers on Instagram, where she posted about her family life and inspiring quotes. In a popular video message, Kiana and her partner appeared dressed in luxury brands, talking about the benefits of entrepreneurship on their lives and those of their thousands of subscribers. The couple emphasized that their goal is to teach their audience how to become successful entrepreneurs and build a solid business foundation. They urged young entrepreneurs to stop wasting their hard-earned money and instead invest it wisely to generate passive income. Their message concluded with the belief that anyone can achieve greatness, not by being great from the start, but by taking the first step towards it. In the Burns family, only Kiana has achieved the success that Ronell often talks about. She has worked hard to build and operate a network of salons on her own and was also a successful insurance agent. Her business generated most of the family's income. Ronell, on the other hand, focused on projecting an image of wealth, often posting photos of the family in expensive clothes and at fancy restaurants. Meanwhile, the wealthy and successful individuals took action, while poor people were drawn to the Burns family's enticing stories of making big money without effort. Ronell received a lot of attention from outsiders because everyone wants to become rich. He eventually founded a company with ambitious six-figure goals, allowing him to continue building his wealth and creating his own legacy, which he frequently boasted about in interviews. The Burns had built a close-knit family unit, and to outsiders it seemed like they were living the perfect life. Ronell and Kiana, both successful in their careers, were inspirations to many, and their children, Rhea, Makai, and Ray Haley, were a big part of their lives. However, beneath the surface, trouble was brewing. Ronell suggested that Kiana leave her hometown of St. Louis and move to Atlanta, a decision that didn't sit well with her. Despite their 3 children together, Kiana was forced to make the move, as Ronell had plans to expand their business. Kiana put on a brave face and pretended to be happy with the decision, but deep down, she was reluctant to leave St. Louis. On social media, she presented a perfect picture of her life, posting photos of the luxurious gifts she received from Ronell, such as a Maserati Levant car and her collection of Louis Vuitton bags. She would accompany these posts with captions expressing her gratitude and admiration for her husband. Like many social media influencers, Kiana also frequently posted about her family and children, painting a rosy picture of her life. Kiana, a woman who appeared to have a perfect life, revealed to her audience that everything wasn't as smooth as it seemed. In reality, she and her partner were on the brink of divorce after moving to Atlanta. This left Kiana alone in a new city, where she had to start from scratch. In a heartfelt video message, Kiana opened up to her subscribers about the challenges she faced when deciding to move and adapt to a new home and people. She emphasized that adjusting to new environments and people without the support of loved ones can be incredibly tough. Kiana also shared her struggles with mental health, expressing concerns about not being strong enough to overcome life's challenges. However, the question remains, was the move to Atlanta the primary reason for the imbalance in her family, or were there other underlying factors at play? In a speech, Kiana refused to mention that the real reason for the problems in their relationship was Ronald's infidelity and promiscuity, which he had kept hidden from their seemingly perfect life on social media. Later that night, Kiana posted a video of herself happily dancing at home with one of her daughters. However, a few hours later, the situation took a tragic turn. Kiana and Ronald got into a long and intense argument, which ended with Kiana grabbing a gun, shooting Ronald, and then herself. By the time the police arrived, neighbors had already gathered outside the Burns' home, reporting that they had heard gunshots coming from inside. The investigation initially suggested that Ronald Burns had taken his own life. But the discovery of Kiana's body in the next room with a gun in her hand revealed that she was the one who had made the fatal decision. While it was clear that Kiana had killed her husband, some people believed that she had been driven to do so after discovering his infidelity. Others thought that the couple's severe debt and Ronald's con artist tendencies had led to the tragic event. As people dug deeper into the couple's lives, they uncovered some revealing information from Ronald's ex-wife. She disclosed that during their divorce, she had learned that Ronald was a habitual cheater and had been reckless with her finances, leading to a ruined credit history and failed jobs. Ronald had then met Kiana, a successful career woman who was drawn to his confidence and charisma. Ronald, in turn, was attracted to Kiana's wealth, and the two seemed like a winning combination. However, their business ventures ultimately failed, leaving only Kiana's beauty salon intact. Despite this, Ronald continued to pretend to be a successful businessman, convincing others of his non-existent achievements. The Burns family presented a false image on social media, showcasing lavish purchases and happy relationships to conceal their severe financial struggles. Ronald posted about his business ventures, claiming he could turn any idea into a profitable success. Behind the facade of a devout Christian couple, they shared Bible quotes and scripture in their posts. They flaunted their luxurious lifestyle, posting photos of their homes, parties, and vacations, creating an illusion of wealth. However, this was all a ruse to hide their true circumstances. Unbeknownst to their followers, Ronald worked for a fraudulent American marketing insurance company that preyed on middle and lower-income families, exploiting them for financial gain. He even tried to recruit his own family and friends to join the scheme, seeking to boost his status. Despite his efforts, Ronald failed to generate enough income from the company and struggled to support himself. The Burns couple pretended to be prosperous entrepreneurs, convincing those around them of their success and even creating a TV show, Meet the Burns, to showcase their supposedly lavish lifestyle. However, their arrogance blinded them to their financial reality, and they spent all their earnings on luxuries, trying to be someone they were not. This reckless spending ultimately led to their downfall and bankruptcy. On December 19, 2019, Kiana and Ronald Burns officially filed for bankruptcy and had to sell some of their assets to pay their debts. Despite their financial troubles, Ronald and Kiana continued to present a false image of a happy family and successful business. But it became increasingly difficult to maintain this facade in St. Louis. Ronald, seeking to further his fraudulent activities, convinced his family to relocation to a larger city. This decision would prove to be yet another mistake. Despite their thriving business being their sole source of income, Kiana reluctantly agreed to the move. However, Kiana struggled to adjust to life in Atlanta. She was already aware of Ronald's repeated infidelities and had grown tired of her patient and silent nature. The couple jointly decided to divorce, but in the divorce papers filed on October 10, 2021, Ronald deceitfully cited Kiana's infidelity as the reason. Devastated, Kiana understood Ronald's motives were to maintain his public image, as their friends and family were unaware of the couple's troubles. Ronald sought to conceal the truth from the public, but on October 20th, 10 days after the divorce filing, Kiana publicly addressed a serious matter on live TV, her usual bright smile replaced by a concerned and sorrowful expression. After divorcing his first wife, Ronald Burns remarried a successful and wealthy woman named Kiana, adopting the persona of a devout guru to hide his true nature. He continued to exploit his new wife's trust and wealth, pretending to be a successful businessman. However, their seemingly perfect marriage was a facade. On November 9, 2021, Kiana shot and killed her husband Ronald before taking her own life. The Sandy Springs Police Department reported that no one else was present at the time of the incident. The tragic event left 8 children without parents. Despite the shocking turn of events, there was no record of domestic violence at their Atlanta home. In the weeks leading up to the incident, Kiana had asked her Facebook friends to pray for her, hinting at deeper struggles. The exact reasons behind her actions remain unknown. It's difficult to judge someone's decisions when they are struggling with depression and other mental health issues. The tragedy is compounded by the fact that 8 children are now left without parents, forced to navigate the world on their own. News of Ronald Burns and his wife Kiana's passing has spread quickly through their large social circle. Their deaths have been widely shared on social media, with many friends and acquaintances expressing sadness and sharing stories about the couple. Even those closest to them have paid tribute, although one friend's post revealed that few people knew the truth about the family until the end. Ronald Burns was known for flaunting his wealth and success, which often masks insecurity. He became so convinced of his own importance that he lost sight of reality. He ruined the lives of multiple successful women, misleading them with false promises of happiness and success. People like him have no self-respect or dignity. He's a con artist who preyed on his wives, deceiving them with fairy tales of eternal love and happiness. Unfortunately, he was able to manipulate them by playing on their emotions. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Amanda Plass. Amanda Lynn Plass was born on December 11, 1990, in Choppy, Massachusetts, where she grew up with her sister Emily and brother Nicholas. Her mother, Michelle Myers, described Amanda as a free-spirited individual who often seemed out of place in the present time. In 2011, Amanda was working as a waitress at a local restaurant in Choppy and was in a relationship with a 27-year-old carpenter named Seth Green. Tragedy struck on August 26, 2011. Seth called 911 and reported that he had found Amanda lying unresponsive in the kitchen of her apartment. When police and paramedics arrived, they found that Amanda was already deceased from multiple stab wounds to her chest, throat, and abdomen. The scene was immediately cordoned off and investigations were initiated. Seth was found sitting on the porch, visibly distressed and emotional. Detectives carefully searched Amanda's apartment for evidence, but the perpetrator had managed to escape the scene. The investigation was ongoing, with the goal of identifying the person responsible for Amanda's murder and bringing them to justice. Detectives began their investigation at the crime scene, where they found a significant amount of blood splatter in the kitchen, indicating that this was where the attack occurred. The evidence suggested that a knife was the likely murder weapon, and it was taken by the perpetrator. Further analysis revealed visible shoe prints from Nike sneakers on the floor and broken window glass, bearing a palm print in one of the rooms. Given the type and number of wounds on Amanda's body, detectives suspected that the perpetrator was someone Amanda knew, and the motive was likely a personal vendetta. As a result, they brought Amanda's boyfriend, Seth Green, in for questioning at the police station. When Seth arrived at the police station, he appeared visibly shaken, overcome with emotion over the loss of his girlfriend. The investigators were interested in determining his emotional response. During the interrogation, Seth explained that he had spent the entire day at work and had planned to give Amanda a ride to her workplace, but was unable to do so due to his own work schedule. Seth had a limited relationship with Amanda, but he loved her and had no motive to harm her. As a carpenter, Seth used various tools at work, including a knife on his tool belt. However, he consistently left his tools at work after his shift, and this day was no exception. After finishing his work, Seth changed his clothes, left his tools behind, and went to meet Amanda. He understood why he was the main suspect, but he denied any involvement in her death. The police investigation confirmed Seth's alibi, and he passed a polygraph test. Additionally, the boots he was wearing when the police arrived didn't match the Nike sneakers found at the crime scene, further ruling out his involvement. Amanda's tragic death led to a complex investigation. Initially, the police explored the possibility that her ex-boyfriend was involved, but further inquiry ruled him out as a suspect. He provided a DNA sample and fingerprints, which did not match the evidence found at the crime scene. Moreover, he had a solid alibi, eliminating him from the list of potential perpetrators. The family's pain deepened when they found out that some police officers had taken photos of Amanda's body while the state police were on their way to the crime scene. These officers shared the disturbing images with other officers and civilians, breaking the family's trust with the authorities and adding to their emotional pain. The case remained stagnant for approximately 2 years until investigators decided to review the evidence again. During this review, a crucial clue was discovered on a dry erase board in Amanda's bedroom. The message, "Dennis was here 8/11, had gone unnoticed until then. Considering the date, this message became significant. It was just 15 days before Amanda's body was discovered in her apartment. The revelation sparked questions. Who was Dennis, and was he connected to Amanda's death? The police had not come across this name throughout the entire investigation. Detectives analyzed Amanda's phone records and social media posts to see if she had any connections to someone named Dennis. Amanda's ex-boyfriend reported to the police that her apartment had been broken into several times when she was not home. Amanda suspected a young man whose name started with the letter D. She knew this man and wanted to resolve the issue peacefully, so she decided to talk to him first. During their meeting, Amanda tried to discuss the break-ins, but the man denied any involvement. When Amanda mentioned that a neighbor had seen him in her apartment, she politely asked him to return her stolen belongings. However, the man left. The investigation then focused on identifying the man named Dennis, who was suspected of being involved in Amanda's death. The police found a man named Dennis Rosa Roman living 3 blocks from the scene of the crime. A background check revealed that Dennis had a history of breaking and entering. Although there was no palm print to match the one found at Amanda's home, the police still wanted to question Dennis. They located him in Westfield, Massachusetts, and invited him to the station for an informal conversation. However, Dennis declined the invitation. But in November 2013, Dennis voluntarily visited the police station. The police questioned Dennis about his relationship with Amanda, and he acknowledged knowing her from Chappie, but claimed he hadn't seen her in a couple of years, which was true since Amanda had been deceased for a couple of years. When asked if he had ever visited Amanda's apartment, Dennis denied ever being there and stated that he didn't know her well. He admitted to occasionally selling weed to Amanda, which was how they occasionally interacted. During the interrogation, Dennis agreed to provide a DNA swab and revealed the size of his shoes, which matched the one found at the crime scene. However, the police noted that Dennis's Nike Air Max shoes had a different tread pattern than the ones that left bloody tracks at the crime scene. After providing his DNA, Dennis refused to answer further questions, promising to return to the police station in a few days to continue the conversation. Initially, the police didn't have sufficient grounds to arrest Dennison, so he was released. This decision was made despite concerns that he might flee and hinder the investigation. Further investigation revealed that Amanda and Dennis had made several phone calls to each other on July 28, 2011. The phone records showed that Amanda initiated 4 calls, while Dennis initiated 5 calls. When Dennis returned to the police station a few days later, his story changed. He now claimed that he had communicated with Amanda about break-ins at her apartment when she wasn't home. Amanda didn't report the incidents because nothing of value was stolen. The investigators found this story unconvincing, particularly since they had heard about the alleged break-ins multiple times before. Their suspicions grew, and they strongly suspected that Dennis was actually the person responsible for breaking into Amanda's apartment. As Rosa Roman continued to alter his initial statement, the investigators became more confident that he was hiding something crucial to the case. The priority shifted to uncovering the truth about his involvement in Amanda's death and determining what secrets he was trying to conceal. When investigators showed Dennis a photo of a dry erase board with the message, "Dennis was here," on August 11, 2011, he initially admitted to writing it, contradicting his previous statement that he had never entered Amanda's apartment. This admission was significant, as it directly implicated him in the crime. Furthermore, DNA results confirmed that Dennis had given false testimony, as his DNA matched the DNA found under Amanda's fingernails, and his palm print was found on a glass at the crime scene. After realizing that the police had gathered sufficient evidence for his arrest, Dennis changed his story for the 3rd time. He now claimed that he had been present at the crime scene and had attempted to save Amanda from the attacker. However, he refused to name the alleged attacker, citing concerns for his and his family's safety. Instead, he provided a detailed description of the person he claimed was responsible for Amanda's death. Dennis described the alleged attacker as a tall, white, light-skinned individual with blue eyes, weighing between 170 and 200 pounds. He also claimed that the person was wearing old pants, dirty boots, and a t-shirt with the phrase, "Why drink and drive when you can smoke and fly?" Despite this new information, detectives did not believe Dennis's story, as all the evidence pointed to him as the sole perpetrator of the crime. As a result, Dennis was arrested and charged with Amanda's murder. The trial took place almost 3 years after Amanda's death, and centered around the debate over whether Dennis was responsible for her murder. His lawyers presented the argument that although Dennis was at the crime scene, he did not commit the murder. Instead, they accused the police of botching the investigation and framing Dennis after their efforts to find the perpetrator failed. Dennis claimed that his involvement in Amanda's death was involuntary. He stated that his dealer forced him to collect a debt at her apartment. Dennis allegedly tried to help Amanda, but couldn't stop the dealer. He cited his DNA under her nails as evidence, saying she grabbed his hand during the incident. In contrast, the prosecutors had a different explanation for the events leading to Amanda's death. They believed that Dennis was breaking into Amanda's apartment while she was not home and that she had caught him. During one of these break-ins, Dennis allegedly left an inscription with his name on a board. Amanda assumed that Dennis was the trespasser who had stolen from her, and that is why she called him and asked him to return the stolen items. This explained the multiple phone calls between Amanda and Dennis on the day she died. Dennis, the killer of Amanda, mistakenly believed Amanda was already at work, re-entered her apartment, and ultimately took her life in a fit of anger during a dispute. A jury convicted Dennis of the crime after 8 days of testimony and 5 hours of deliberation. Dennis received a life sentence in prison with no possibility of parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. the case of Christina Ann and Thompson Harris. Christina Ann Thompson, 30, and Jason Thomas Harris, 40, had been married since 2003 after dating for about 5 years. They had their first child in 2009, and their lives changed significantly. Despite the challenges of everyday life, they seemed happy with their new life as parents. Christina took care of their child and the household, while Jason worked at a plastics factory. As their child grew up, Christina had the opportunity to contribute to the family budget by getting a job. However, in May 2014, she had to take maternity leave as she was expecting her second child. On September 29, 2014, Jason left for work and exchanged a few words with Christina, who was not feeling well due to a cold. Despite her poor health, she assured Jason that she was okay. A few hours later, Jason called his wife to check on her, but she didn't answer the phone. This sparked worry in Jason, as he couldn't understand why Christina wasn't answering his calls. Jason couldn't reach Christina, so he asked a neighbor to check on her. He told the neighbor that Christina was sick and wasn't answering her phone. The neighbor went to the house, knocked on the door, and called out to Christina, but no one answered. Since the door was unlocked, the neighbor went inside and found Christina lying on the bed. She couldn't wake Christina up, so she called 911 and then got a neighbor who was a registered nurse to help. The nurse checked Christina's pulse and confirmed that she had passed away. On September 29, 2014, 4 months after giving birth to her second child, Christina was found dead in her house. When the police arrived, Jason was already there. He told them that Christina was sick and he had left her alone in the morning. 2 days later, the medical examiner determined that Christina's death was caused by an overdose of a prohibited substance. This news shocked her family and friends. Christina, a mother of 2 young children, was found dead, and many people who knew her were shocked. They claimed she had never used illegal substances. Her mother, Kathy May, reported to the police that Christina was fine when she saw her the day before her death, contradicting her husband Jason's statement that Christina was struggling with a cold. Kathy May also revealed that Christina described her marriage to Jason as complicated. Jason was unhappy in the marriage but didn't want a divorce because he didn't want to pay child support or lose custody of their children. The neighbors who had discovered Christina's body shared some information with the police. Apparently, Jason told them that on the evening before Christina's death, he made her cereal with milk, and while eating, she lost consciousness and dropped the plate. The police understood that it was hard for Christina's loved ones to accept that someone they knew well might have a hidden dark side. However, as the investigation progressed, the police began to doubt that Christina had used any illegal substances. Christina's family refused to give up, and they didn't believe the story. Christina's family, particularly her mother and sisters, urged the police to test her breast milk for evidence. Initially, the police delayed this request for 48 hours, but the family's persistence eventually led them to comply. This marked the first time in Michigan's history that breast milk was used as evidence in a case. Tests conducted at her workplace and the hospital where she gave birth to her second child came back negative for prohibited substances. At the time of her death, her second child was just 4 months old, and Christina was still breastfeeding both children. According to her husband, Harris, and her mother, Christina was meticulous about what she consumed because she was breastfeeding and wanted to ensure her baby's health and safety. Christina had been pumping and storing her breast milk in a freezer, with some of the frozen milk stored at her mother's house. Investigators tested 3 bags of breast milk for prohibited substances, using the dates on the bags to determine which ones were frozen before her death. The results showed no traces of banned substances in any of the milk samples. This finding suggested that Christina had not taken the substance that caused her death. Only one person, Jason's sister, had claimed that Christina had used banned substances. This statement led investigators to take a closer look at Jason and consider the possibility that Christina's death was intentional. The investigation was slow, and it's unclear how it would have progressed without the active involvement of Christina's family. Her mother, Kathy May, kept in close contact with the Davidson police, reminding them about her daughter's case. In August 2016, almost 2 years after Christina's death, Kathy May was able to get the Davidson police to turn the case over to the Michigan State Police. With new investigators on the case, the story began to unfold, revealing more information about Jason Harris's behavior before and after his wife's death. Harris was involved in multiple extramarital affairs, and Christina was aware of these infidelities. She had confided in family members and co-workers about the situation, including the fact that Harris was texting another woman while she was in the hospital giving birth to their youngest child. Christina had expressed concerns about her safety, telling a co-worker that if she died, Harris would be the one responsible. When asked if she was serious, she confirmed that she was. Harris had made public statements that questioned the paternity of their second child and had complained about Christina's behavior after giving birth, saying she was depressed and refusing to work. He also complained about her nagging him. A co-worker of Harris's reported that he had made disturbing comments about Christina, including expressing a desire for her death. This co-worker described the relationship between Harris and Christina as toxic, citing frequent arguments between them. The most alarming aspect of this case is that Harris was open about his desire to get rid of Christina, and he even took steps to harm her. Unfortunately, his words and actions were not taken seriously until it was too late. Harris had attempted to poison Christina on at least 2 occasions by mixing substances into her drinks. Fortunately, Christina was able to detect the unusual taste and avoided drinking the beverages. Harris asked a co-worker for a substance that would not affect the taste or smell of food and drinks, explaining that he wanted to poison Christina so she wouldn't feel anything. When he told another co-worker that Christina didn't drink the water with the substance because it tasted funny, the co-worker refused to give him more pills. A co-worker testified that Harris told him he wanted to stop Christina from nagging him, but the co-worker thought he was joking. Harris also told a co-worker that he had hired someone to kill Christina, but the person was arrested before they could carry out the task. Harris then asked the co-worker to kill Christina in exchange for $10,000, which would be paid from a $100,000 life insurance policy Christina had through her employer. The co-worker refused the offer, believing that Harris was just venting his emotions and that the offer to kill Christina was a joke. He remembered the conversation as Harris saying something like, "I'm tired of her. I'm going to get rid of her." Back to the case, the 911 operator asked the neighbor who found Christina's body if there were any needles at the scene, but the neighbor did not see any. The neighbor, a registered nurse, testified that Christina's body was cold and stiff, had no pulse, and had a white foamy substance coming from her mouth. The neighbor did not attempt to resuscitate Christina because she was already dead. The paramedics who responded to the scene confirmed that Christina was dead. Harris told his supervisor that he had asked a neighbor to check on Christina and that he had to go home because she was unresponsive. However, witnesses reported that Harris did not appear concerned or in a hurry when he arrived at the house. Harris entered the house without speaking to the neighbor he had asked to check on Christina. Later that morning, Harris contacted Christina's supervisor at work and informed her of Christina's death. He also inquired about collecting the $100,000 life insurance policy benefit that Christina had through her job. One of the women Harris was in a relationship with told investigators that Harris contacted her on the day of Christina's death and said that his wife had died from taking too much of a banned substance. This suggests that Harris knew the cause of Christina's death before the medical examiner's report was released. Harris shared some details about the night before Christina's death, including her restless sleep, frequent coughing, and unusual comment about the chemical taste of her water. He later visited her workplace to inquire about life insurance proceeds, collecting a $20,000 death benefit and raising suspicions with his actions. A mistress also moved in with him and his children, either before or after her funeral. The mistress stated that Jason Harris's adult children from a previous marriage moved into the house just days after Christina's death. Police also found that Jason Harris had bought an airline ticket to Rhode Island 9 days after Christina's death to visit a woman he had exchanged over 5,800 texts with. The county medical examiner, Dr. Brian Hunter, submitted post-mortem blood and urine samples for testing. Although the test results were consistent with a lethal dose of the substance, there was no evidence of how the substance was administered, as there were no injection marks on her body and no powder residues or rolling paper were found near the scene of her death. Michigan State Police took over the investigation in 2016. Dr. Hunter changed the manner of death from accidental to homicide after a wrongful death action. Jason Harris was charged with first-degree murder and others. His bail was denied. Harris pleaded not guilty and will contest the charges. The prosecution eliminated the possibility of injection as the cause of death because there were no injection marks or a needle found at the scene. Dr. Judge testified that it was unlikely the substance was inhaled through the nose because there was no evidence of a rolled dollar bill or paper used for snorting. When given the opportunity to speak, Jason Harris did not apologize or express remorse. Instead, he claimed he was innocent. The jury did not believe his claims and found him guilty of the charges against him. On November 17, 2021, the jury delivered a guilty verdict for 47-year-old Harris. 3 weeks later, the court sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Hello, friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Amanda Anderson. Amanda Anderson was born on October 10, 1990, in Fridley, Minnesota, to Mark and Stacy Kennedy Anderson. Amanda grew up to be an aspiring writer with a passion for words, music, and life. She graduated with honors from the Tyler Gospel Chapel School in 2009 and worked at Trinity Mother Frances while attending Tyler Junior College, where she majored in English literature. On September 15, 2010, 15-year-old Nate Anderson found his sister Amanda dead on the floor with multiple bullet holes in her head after returning from a jog. He had gone out to clear his head while doing homework, but became stressed and returned to find the door kicked open. Nate immediately called 911, describing the scene without touching anything. When investigators arrived, Nate recounted the events, still shaken. The investigation revealed that Amanda was shot while sitting on her bed, causing her to fall to the floor. The killer removed shell casings, suggesting a revolver was used. Amanda's death was devastating to her parents, who were deeply religious and couldn't comprehend who would commit such a heinous act. Their daughter had just graduated from high school and was trying to find her way in life. She had no enemies and wished no one harm. The investigators canvassed the neighborhood where the crime took place, speaking with residents to gather information about Amanda and her family. Uniformly, the people they interviewed described the Andersons as a tight-knit, religious family. One neighbor offered a possible theory about Amanda's fate. He pointed out that the area was previously crime-free, but 2 weeks before Amanda's death, a house in the neighborhood was robbed. It's possible that the same person was involved in Amanda's murder. The neighbors suggested that the perpetrator might have seen Amanda's brother, Nate, go for a run, then broken into their house. If Amanda witnessed the break-in, the robber might have shot her to silence her. To explore this theory, the investigators needed evidence to determine whether a botched robbery led to Amanda's death. Typically, burglars who are caught by homeowners will go to great lengths to prevent them from calling the police. However, in this case, nothing was taken from the Anderson home, and Amanda's room was left undisturbed. Amanda's home was burgled, but the thief didn't take anything valuable, including jewelry and a laptop. Amanda's father, Mark, checked the house and confirmed that nothing was missing. This led the investigators to question whether the break-in was actually a robbery gone wrong. The forensic team searched Amanda's room and the entire house for evidence, collecting fingerprints and hair samples that didn't belong to Amanda or her family. They also took the clothes Nate wore when he found Amanda's body, even though they didn't have any visible bloodstains. This was consistent with Nate's 911 call, in which he said he hadn't touched anything. The police still sent the clothes to the lab for further analysis, along with other evidence. To begin their investigation, the police first had to rule out Amanda's family members as potential suspects. They asked her father, Mark Anderson, to show them all the weapons in their house, which was a common practice in Texas. Although the Andersons weren't avid hunters, they did occasionally practice shooting. Following Mark's directions, the police found and seized over 10 different types of pistols, rifles, and revolvers from the house. With no clear motives or suspects, the police explored the possibility of criminal gang involvement, but they quickly dismissed it. Their informants also didn't provide any useful information. 2 days after her death, on September 17, 2010, the police received the autopsy report, which revealed that Amanda had been shot 4 times in the head. What was especially puzzling was that every shot would have been fatal, yet the perpetrator had continued to pull the trigger 3 more times. The unusual location and direction of the bullet wounds on Amanda's head raised suspicions. The attacker used a small-caliber pistol, firing from a distance of at least a yard away, as there were no gunpowder marks around the wounds. 2 wounds were located on top of her head, one near the right temple and one on her forehead, with all shots entering from top to bottom, except for one shot to the right temple that entered at a right angle. This suggested a deliberate and controlled attack, more like an execution. Forensic analysis led investigators to believe that Amanda knew her killer. They based this conclusion on 2 key facts. Firstly, Amanda was sitting on her bed, occupied with her laptop, when she was shot, indicating that she felt comfortable and safe in the presence of the attacker. Secondly, the fact that the attacker was standing next to her suggests a level of familiarity and intimacy. If Amanda had not known the person, she would likely have reacted or taken action when they entered her room, but she did not, implying that she trusted the perpetrator and did not anticipate the attack. Detectives investigating Amanda's death questioned her college friends, learning she was cautious and avoided strangers, drugs, and criminals. Her best friend confirmed she had no enemies on campus. Despite this, they considered that someone might have secretly targeted her. Reviewing college security footage and reports from the past year, they searched for suspicious incidents, but found nothing useful. The police revisited the Anderson family to inquire about Amanda's personal life, suspecting a personal motive behind the brutal crime due to the multiple wounds. Amanda's mother was baffled by the incident, describing her daughter as a kind and diligent student who regularly attended church. Although Amanda didn't have a boyfriend at the time of her death, her mother revealed that she had met someone about a year prior, but their relationship ended. The police sought out this individual to learn more about his connection with Amanda and the reasons behind their breakup. Upon questioning, the man revealed that he and Amanda shared some classes and occasionally went to the movies with friends, but they never developed a romantic relationship. They had gone out together a few times, but it didn't progress further. When asked about the last time he saw Amanda, he stated that it was the day before her murder. The police started their investigation again from the beginning, re-examining all the evidence. They focused on Nate's 911 call, which was the starting point of the case. During the call, Nate claimed he didn't enter his sister's room and that someone had shot Amanda. The investigators realized it was impossible for someone standing in the doorway to know Amanda was shot in the head, or how many times, without entering the room. The police revisited the Anderson house and inspected the door, which Nate said was opened when he got home. Although there were scratches on the door, the lock was intact, leading the police to believe someone was trying to make it look like the door was kicked in. The crime lab analyzed the weapons found in the Anderson house and concluded that one of the pistols was likely the weapon used to shoot Amanda. After a thorough investigation, detectives reached a conclusion. All evidence pointed to a family member as Amanda's killer. The murder weapon, a pistol, was hidden in a secure location, suggesting the killer knew exactly where to find it. Moreover, the killer returned the gun to its hiding place after the crime. On the night of the murder, Amanda's parents had solid alibis. Her father was dining with a friend, and her mother was at work. This left only Amanda and her 15-year-old brother Nate in the house. To find answers, investigators delved deeper into the events of that evening. It turned out that Amanda's father, Mark, had called her to remind her to pick up her mother from work. 12 minutes later, Mark received a call from Nate, who was crying and claimed someone had shot Amanda. However, this call raised a disturbing question. Why did Nate call his father before calling emergency services, unless he was trying to cover his tracks after murdering his own sister? The police required solid proof before making any accusations, as they didn't want to cause further distress to Amanda and Nate's parents. To gather more information, the investigators decided to question Mark Anderson, Nate's father, without directly accusing his son of involvement. During the conversation, Nate's parents became aware that the police suspected their son. When asked about Nate's recent use of the .22 caliber pistol, Mark revealed that he had given the gun to Nate a few days before Amanda's death, and that Nate had fired it in their backyard. The officers went back to the Anderson house and found .22 caliber casings in the backyard that matched the bullets found in Amanda's body. While this was suspicious, it wasn't conclusive evidence. However, 2 weeks later, a crucial clue was found. Nate's clothes, which he wore when he claimed to have found his sister dead, were tested with luminol, revealing traces of blood. Further analysis by a national blood spatter expert suggested that Nate was either in the room when the shooting occurred or was the one who fired the fatal shots. The tests confirmed that his clothes had Amanda's blood on them. Despite this, the Anderson siblings seemed to have a loving relationship. Photos showed them being affectionate, and their parents described them as best friends who often made videos together, including one just days before Amanda's death. The police were left wondering what could have driven Nate to commit such a heinous act. On November 10, 2010, police arrested Nate Anderson at a church, suspecting him of murdering his own sister. The accusation shocked everyone who knew him, as it seemed out of character. The trial began on October 24, 2011, and was an emotionally challenge for the Anderson family. Despite the evidence presented against Nate, his family remains supportive and refuses to believe he is capable of such a crime. According to his grandmother, Dolores Anderson, Nate is a kind and innocent boy who would never harm his sister. His parents, too, are adamant that he is not responsible for Amanda's death. For his mother, Stacy Anderson, the whole ordeal has been a nightmare. She is still adjusting to the loss of her daughter and now has to cope with her son's arrest. Mark expressed his outrage and disbelief at the accusation that his son killed his sister Amanda. The brutality of the crime, including the fact that Amanda was shot 4 times, has led Mark to conclude that Nate could not have committed the crime. Initially, Mark had some doubts about Nate's involvement, but once he learned about the 4 gunshots, he became convinced of his son's innocence. Mark is critical of the authorities, accusing them of ignoring evidence that exonerates Nate and instead focusing on evidence that supports their own case. He feels that they have already made up their minds about Nate's guilt, despite the fact that an expert had recommended that Nate be tried in juvenile court, not adult court. After Amanda's death, investigators found evidence in the Anderson home that shed light on the case. Prosecutors discovered that Nate's computer had a history of visits to adult websites and violent drawings. Furthermore, a text message on Amanda's phone mentioned someone should be shot, but the context indicated it was a joke about Nate not helping with chores and playfully shooting staples at Amanda. An expert testified that this evidence could be a motive for the crime. However, Nate's attorney argued that the evidence was not unusual or incriminating. Ultimately, Nate accepted a plea deal in February 2012 and pleaded guilty to a first-degree crime. He confessed to a psychologist and his parents that he had killed Amanda. In a statement, Nate and Amanda's parents shared Nate's confession. According to Mark Anderson, Nate told him that he shot Amanda with a pistol found in their home and asked for forgiveness, which he granted. Stacy, the mother, expressed the immense difficulty she experienced as a mother who